You're welcome. Okay, look like the live stream is up. Sergeant, can you check to make sure that we are in the right Zoom room?
Yes, pulling up the Zoom now. 1 second.
Look like we're good. Can we begin with recordings?
PC recording started.
Thank you. Cloud recording started. At this time, good morning and welcome to the New York City Council remote hearing on the Committee on General Welfare. At this time, all panelists, please turn on your videos. I repeat, all panelists, please turn on your videos. Thank you. To minimize disruption, please place all electronic devices to vibrate or silent mode. Thank you. If you wish to submit testimonies, you may do so via email at testimony@council.nyc.gov. I repeat, testimony@council.nyc.gov. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Committee on the General Welfare hearing. Today, the committee will hold an oversight hearing on unsheltered homelessness in New York City. As of the 2021 Hope Count, there were 2,376 individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness in New York City. These numbers likely do not accurately reflect the number of individuals living on the streets and in the subways, and the total number is likely much higher than the statistics indicate. We know that those experiencing unsheltered homelessness have higher rates of physical health issues, mental and behavioral health issues, and substance use disorders. Among them, many are chronically homeless, having lived on the street or the subway for at least 9 months of the past 2 years. These individuals have more entrenched needs, with their physical and mental health conditions being complicated by years of living on the streets without access to routine medical, mental health, and dental care. There is a valid mistrust of others and of government among these individuals, many who are often less responsive to government services and outreach. What we need as a city is to develop rapport and to trust with individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And we need to have an actual plan to support these individuals moving into permanent, affordable, and supportive housing. Removing these individuals off the street without any substantial and safe place to house them is simply inhumane and short-sighted. Pushing them into congregate settings where they have already declined placement for many reasons, including safety concerns, is not a plan. Today, the committee would like to hear more about encampment sweeps and the subway safety plan, including how many who have been removed are still staying in shelter or permanent housing setting. I was pleased to hear of the administration's plan to open up additional safe haven and stabilization beds. Today, we want to hear more details about the plan, including what the timeline is for opening and how many new beds will be available. We want to learn more about how the administration is working to ensure that the needs are met of persons with disabilities and those with pets who are currently experiencing unsheltered homelessness. Today, we will also be hearing several bills related to, including 2 bills, intros 211 and 212, which I have co-sponsored. Both of my bills would require reporting on the utilization of temporary emergency housing across all city administered facilities. These bills would make it easier to understand the scope of homeless services in New York City and better assess gaps that may exist. Thank you to the advocates, members of the public, and those who have lived experience who are joining us remotely today. And thank you to representatives from the administration for joining us. I look forward to hearing from all of you on all of these critical issues. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues. I see Council Member Ong, I see Council Member Kabang. I'm trying to see, I see Council Member Lee. I believe some of the colleagues are at a press conference. There was some really big news that was leaked yesterday, and so some members will be joining us momentarily. But finally, I would like to thank the committee staff who worked so hard to prepare for this hearing today. Aminta Kilawan, Crystal Pond, Julia Haramis, Rose Martinez, Nicholas Montalbano, and my staff, Michelle Cruz, and the Deputy Chief of Staff. And now I'd like to call on the council, well, I was gonna call on Council Member Aviles, but I believe that she is not yet with us. So with that, I will pass it over to the moderator.
Thank you, Chair Ayala, and good morning, everyone. I am Aminta Kilawan, Senior Counsel for the Committee on General Welfare for the New York City Council. I'm going to be moderating today's hearing. And before we begin, I want to go over a few procedural matters. I'll be calling on panelists to testify. I want to remind everyone that you will be on mute until you are called, and then you're going to be unmuted. Please listen for your name to be called. For everyone testifying today, please note that there may be a few seconds of a delay before you are unmuted, and we thank you in advance for your patience on that. At today's hearing, the first panel will be comprised of members of the public, followed by the administration, followed by council member questions, and then additional members of the public will testify. During the hearing, if council members would like to ask a question, please use the Zoom raise hand function, and you'll be called upon in order of the order that you raised your hand. Again, our first panel will be comprised of public testimony, and all public testimony will be limited to 2 minutes. After I call your name, please wait a brief moment for the Sergeant at Arms to announce that you may begin before you start your testimony. And please also note that panelists will be able to register for this hearing until 3 hours into the hearing rather. The first public panel in order of speaking will be Johnny Grima, Chao Nieves, and Marcus Moore. I am now going to turn it over to our first panel, beginning with Johnny Grima.
Starting time.
Can we unmute him? Johnny, okay.
Hello, can you hear me now?
There you go, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to start by saying that there are more than 200,000 vacant units in New York City. So the mayor's plan to make these safe haven units is just perpetuating the housing crisis in New York City. That this is by design by like wealthy real estate people and landlords and bought politicians such as Adams, Hochul, and others. I didn't really, unfortunately, there's so much going on in my life, but with police harassment and violence against me, threats of violence by the police, that I don't really have time to like focus on even things like this. But the stress is difficult. But I guess I should probably speak about the street sweeps while I have some time. It's the NYPD have done to us like basically what they've always done to homeless people, which is just like brutalize them when they want them to move and destroy their belongings. It's very regular. As a matter of fact, as terrible as like the situations that me and my neighbors have been through in this last month or so, it would be so much worse, I believe, if there weren't cameras on us. And yeah, it's disgusting. Try to pigeonhole homeless people into congregate housing shelters, for instance. But even the singles, such as hotels and whatnot, still have these rigid rules. Like there's no such thing as tenants' rights in these places, you know? Like a staff can basically get you transferred over like a bogus accusation, you know? And often, you know, I believe even the shelters, they still scan you with a metal detector. You know, you can only be gone for up to like 3 days without losing your bed. Like it's crazy. You know, they can come in and check all your stuff. I mean, like, why are homeless people being treated like terrorists or something? You know, like, why do we have to get treated like that? Especially when there's so many empty units in the city. And, you know, to end homelessness in New York, you got to get rid of evictions too. So those two things go together. I don't know, like, I don't think
Time
that.
expired.
Huh? Say that again?
Time has expired. Johnny, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, shelters and safe havens are abusive environments. There are more than 200,000 vacant units in New York City compared to about 90,000 homeless people in the state. If they're looking for somewhere to put people, they don't have to look too hard because they have like 200,000 options. All right, they should be building more safe havens and shelters.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you so much, Johnny, for your testimony. I'm now going to call on Chao Nieves for testimony. Over to Chao.
Starting time.
Do you hear me?
Yes,
We can hear you.
Awesome. My name is Chao Nieves. I am very blessed to be in an apartment on 159th Street. and I moved in last month. I have been struggling with housing instability since I was 17 years old. And I will never forget my first night in the shelter because I was told that if I didn't want to take a shower in this dirty stall, then I can go find somewhere else. And it was the dead of night. And there have been many times where my safety and my hygiene has been compromised out of the convenience for a staff member. There have been many times where outreach or police officers have they've profiled me and they've treated me very foul because I'm homeless. They treat me as if I am somebody who struggles with substances. And even then, I think that people who come from those walks of life deserve a little compassion. You know, we are running from a lot of pain, and then we are put in environments ruled by people who are hungry for power, and they hold the little bit of stability you have over your head as if it's a treat, and they dehumanize us. I'm only 24 years old and I finally have my home for myself, and I am very privileged right now. But I've fought for 7 years, and there are plenty of people who have fought longer than me and they have little to nothing still. And it's very unfair. Yeah, we just deserve better than this. There's no reason why people should be coming out of abusive relationships or homes, or coming from environments where they have nothing, from, just from the system, to be brought into like some sort of hell. People need help. Thank you.
Time.
Thank you for sharing that, John. Congratulations on finally getting your new place. I hope that you're enjoying it. And I know that the journey there was not easy and, took way too long, but I'm really excited for this new chapter in your life. And I want to thank you for, being here today and really helping to bring a face, right, to this issue and to continue to share your story. I think that's very powerful. And we welcome you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chow, for your testimony. I am going to now turn to Marcus Moore for testimony. Over to Marcus.
Starting time. Marcus, you may begin.
I think we are having some technical difficulties hearing Marcus at this point. Marcus, it seems like your audio is a bit muffled.
Yeah. Yeah. So good morning.
Marcus, you may want to,
briefly. So, yes, I will just yes. So I will just recently out.
Marcus, I don't know if you can hear me. Marcus, I don't know if you can hear me.
can we mute Marcus and send him a message to get off and get back on?
Homeless people do not really want to be sleeping in the streets, right? We don't want to be in shelter. Hello, you don't? Yeah. What about now? Do you hear me?
Now we can actually hear you a little bit better, but.
Hear now? Hello? Oh, wow.
Hi, Marcus. Marcus, we're going to have to come back to you because for some reason.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, can we hear from the next person? Amenta, you're muted.
So at this point, we have concluded the first public panel. We're going to now move on to the second panel, which will be members of the administration. I'm now going to call on members of the administration to testify. DSS Commissioner Gary Jenkins, and for questions and answers, DHS Commissioner Jocelyn Carter and DHS Assistant Commissioner for Partnership, Capacity Building and Strategy, Shane Cox. I am now going to read the oath, and afterwards I'll call on each panelist here from the administration to respond individually. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions? Commissioner Jenkins.
Yes.
Thank you. DHS Administrator Carter.
I do.
Thank you. And finally, DHS Assistant Commissioner Cox.
Yes, I do.
Thank you all. Commissioner Jenkins, you may begin when ready.
Thank you. Good morning. I want to thank the General Welfare Committee and Deputy Speaker Ayala for holding today's hearing and for the opportunity to testify about the Department of Homeless Services work to support unsheltered New Yorkers. My name is Gary P. Jenkins, and I am the Commissioner of the Department of Social Services. I am joined by Department of Homeless Services Administrator Jocelyn Carter and DHS Assistant Commissioner for Partnership, Capacity Building and Strategy, Shane Cox. We look forward to updating the committee today on the work of DHS and our partner agencies in addressing homelessness. As Mayor Adams has stated and made clear from the beginning of this administration, every New Yorker deserves dignity and safety, and there is neither when living unsheltered. That is why we have been laser focused in implementing the mayor's initiative to encourage vulnerable New Yorkers to come inside and off the streets and subways and enter safe settings with dedicated supports. This approach is reinforced by our commitment to aggressively expand our low barrier resources and capacity, which was highlighted by the mayor's recent announcement to allocate unprecedented resources for New Yorkers experiencing homelessness. As part of this investment, the Adams administration will add more than $170 million in fiscal year 2023 executive budget to provide high quality services for unsheltered New Yorkers. As mentioned, this would be the largest investment made by any city administration to fund and expand street outreach programs and low barrier programs. As announced by Mayor Adams, this investment will fund around 1,400 low barriers, safe havens, and stabilization beds, which would bring the total of these beds to over 4,000, opening up more opportunities for our vulnerable neighbors to access our services and get the support they need. This administration has already made significant progress on this commitment to increase the capacity of low barrier beds dedicated to serving New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness as part of the subway safety plan. As of today, the city has opened new high quality sites which will offer dedicated supports to more than 400 New Yorkers as part of nearly 500 specialized beds announced in the plan earlier this year. More than 100 beds are expected to come online in the coming months, exceeding the goal originally announced in the plan. The city will fund nearly 900 more beds, bringing the total number of new capacity funded by this investment to more than 1,400 beds. The mayor's recent announcement includes $19 million to create 3 additional drop-in centers, in addition to funding for specialized staff such as nurses, psychiatrists, and social workers to support the well-being of our clients. Lastly, $12 million of this investment will be allocated to DSS's expanded outreach programs, which will increase the number of staff conducting subway outreach and placements, thus intensifying our reach and add transportation services and other resources to help streamline the process of connecting clients to placement opportunities. As we begin our discussion today on unsheltered homelessness in New York City, we should acknowledge that the vast majority of people experiencing homelessness in our city are sheltered indoors across the shelter system because we have a right to shelter. That stands in stark contrast with other jurisdictions around the nation, particularly on the West Coast, where the proportion of unsheltered individuals experiencing homelessness on the street is greater than in New York City. Our work to reach and support unsheltered New Yorkers happens each and every day, weekends and holidays, and at all hours of the day and night. Our approach to reaching and helping unsheltered New Yorkers is centered around building trust over multiple interactions. Work that is carried out with care and compassion by our staff and providers surveying our neighborhoods for unsheltered individuals in need. This work is deeply personal to me. As I discussed with this committee in the past, I myself experienced homelessness and spent time in the shelter as a child. So I understand firsthand that our work changes lives and that we have a responsibility to provide our clients with resources that they need to not just survive, but to thrive in our city. We are the safety net of last resort for many New Yorkers, and I take our responsibility to shelter our most vulnerable neighbors with the utmost seriousness. Before we summarize our work to support unsheltered New Yorkers and our strategies to help those in need, I want to provide important background on DHS and homelessness. DHS is committed to preventing and addressing homelessness across the 5 boroughs. Our staff and providers employ many innovative strategies to help individuals who are in temporary shelter or are unsheltered to come in off the streets and to successfully transition to permanency. The mission of DHS is to prevent homelessness when possible, address street homelessness, provide safe temporary shelter, and connect New Yorkers experiencing homelessness to suitable housing. We carry out this mission with care and compassion for each client in their circumstances. We also remain committed to meeting our legal and moral mandates to provide temporary emergency shelter at request to all eligible New Yorkers who need it. Our staff and providers also help these individuals access a variety of social services, employment opportunities, work supports, and other public benefits. We also help clients increase their financial literacy and search for permanent housing to ensure a seamless transition back to independent living and stability. As we continue our discussion today, it is important to contextualize the environment in which we do this work. In recent years, New York City has seen significant decreases in affordable housing. In the decade between 2005 and 2015, household rents in New York City increased by 18.4%, while at the same time, incomes fell to keep pace, increasing by only 4.8%. Looking at affordable housing supply, between 1994 and 2012, the city suffered a net loss of about 150,000 rent stabilized units. As a result, by 2015, the city had insufficient housing for millions of low-income New Yorkers. These trends, along with the factors such as an economy that leaves too many living paycheck to paycheck, domestic violence, overcrowding, housing evictions, untreated mental health challenges, and inadequate discharge planning from mental health institutions and state correctional facilities have resulted in homelessness and displacement across the 5 boroughs over the past decades. While these challenges persist, we are steadily working to address the multifaceted drivers of homelessness. Now I would like to walk the committee through the multi-pronged strategies that we had in place to support New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness, starting with our street outreach strategies. These outreach strategies are proactive, and we are proud of the work our staff perform to actively identify and connect with vulnerable New Yorkers. Our outreach teams canvass the 5 boroughs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year as part of our efforts to identify and support individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness. Our strategies place trust at the center of our work. Building trust can take several years and often requires multiple interactions as we encourage unsheltered New Yorkers to accept our services so they can in due course transition off the streets. Ending homelessness is a citywide effort, and we need everyone to pitch in to support the city's proactive outreach efforts. To New Yorkers, to all those New Yorkers who are listening, if you are traveling our streets, subways, and parks, I implore you to not just walk by a fellow New Yorker who is unsheltered. Contact 311 immediately and be part of the solution. If the person appears to pose an immediate risk to themselves or others, New Yorkers should call 911 for assistance. This is a critical step in helping the city identify individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And we ask that you inform your constituents about ways they can help by giving our collective responsibility to assist our neighbors in need. Once someone calls 311 to report an unsheltered New Yorker in need of assistance, a 311 service request is created. That service request is then routed to a social service provider or a partner agency, which results in an outreach team being dispatched to the reported location. The outreach teams then locate that individual and, if found, directly engage the person, assess for safety, and encourage them to accept services and transition off the streets or subways. To implement and organize our outreach work, the city launched the Homeless Outreach and Mobile Engagement Street Action Teams, or better known as HOMESTAT. Through this system, we have built the city's first by name list of individuals who are known and currently engaged by HOMESTAT outreach teams and are confirmed to be experiencing unsheltered homelessness. New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness face many barriers to transitioning indoors. Many of our unsheltered neighbors have fallen through various safety nets, experienced trauma, or are dealing with mental health or substance use challenges. All of these factors make New Yorkers our most vulnerable population. As mentioned, it can take multiple interactions and persistent and compassionate engagement to successfully encourage someone experiencing unsheltered homelessness to accept city services. Given these circumstances, it is important to understand that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to ending homelessness. However, HOMESTAT and our approach allows our outreach teams to engage New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness person by person, directly and repeatedly, working to gain their trust and ultimately encourage them to accept services. Shifting to the services available to New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness, I want to highlight the specialized facilities DHS oversees to support these individuals. Along with our providers, DHS operates drop-in centers, stabilization beds, and safe havens, which provide low barrier programs that specifically target individuals who may be resistant to accept our services or other services, including traditional shelter. For the committee's background, I want to provide a more detailed overview of these resources. Drop-in centers offer baseline services with the goal of meeting immediate needs for unsheltered New Yorkers, such as meals and showers. Drop-in centers have case management services on site, which provide an immediate option for individuals who want to transition off the streets. In the case of safe havens, we provide traditional housing model with specialized overnight beds, more intimate and hands-on case management, along with low barrier program requirements. To build on the success of Safe Haven model, we have expanded the number of these specialized beds across the city, with more coming online to support New Yorkers in need, as highlighted by the mayor's historical investment in low barrier beds. Lastly, like safe havens, stabilization beds are small scale and low barrier programs aimed at helping individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness who may be resistant to accepting services. Moreover, our stabilization beds are aimed for clients who are more able to live independently and include several services to ensure they are supported. These facilities are equipped with on-site services and staff who work closely with clients to build trust, stabilize their living circumstances, and encourage transitioning, from unsheltered homelessness and into permanent housing. The services provided here are frequently the first step in helping New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness on a path to stability. And we are proud of this work and the results we achieve each and every day. Another key resource available to help New Yorkers experiencing homelessness is supportive housing, a model of affordable housing with supportive social services in place for individuals who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. These services are overseen by the Human Resources Administration's Office of Supportive and Affordable Housing and Services, whose focus is on developing permanent housing solutions for formerly homeless individuals. Our supportive housing teams work closely with our partners to develop new housing programs and refer applicants to housing so they can stabilize their lives and improve their circumstances. Now, I would like to shift to update the committee on our recent initiatives taken on by this administration, starting with our subway outreach efforts, through which DHS and our provider organizations work to reach and support New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness in the subways. As Mayor Adams has stated, it is inhumane to allow our fellow New Yorkers to sleep and live on the subway. We must not turn a blind eye towards their plight. As part of this initiative, our outreach teams who are canvassing every day, day and night, have enhanced access to clinicians, providing outreach staff with new tools and resources to further strengthen our outreach efforts in the subway system. The Subway Outreach Initiative is centered around interagency and city and state collaboration, with the aim to assist New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness in the subway. The initiative includes the following features: deploying joint response teams made up of DHS, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, the New York City Police Department, and community-based providers in high-need locations across the city. They work in partnership with the state's Safe Options Support Outreach Teams, also known as SOS teams, which consist of outreach workers and clinicians. Incorporating medical services to individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness. Streamlining the placement process into supportive housing and minimizing the amount of paperwork required to show eligibility. And again, creating new drop-in centers to provide a direct route for New Yorkers to come indoors and exploring opportunities to place drop-in centers closer to the key subway stations to more seamlessly transition individuals indoors. Since the inception of this initiative, our teams have canvassed subway platforms, subway cars, transit hubs, and end-of-line subway stations to offer services and supports to New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness. When a person in the subway is engaged by an outreach team, they are evaluated to address their individualized needs, recognizing that there is no one-size-fits-all solution to address the circumstances that may have resulted in the person's homelessness. Our outreach staff and clinicians offer a range of services and supports. As we have previously stated, their efforts are all about repeated engagement to build trust with New Yorkers in need, with the goal being to connect them to long-term permanent housing, mental health and substance use treatment, and community-based services. For the committee's awareness, every day, outreach teams conduct on average 700 engagements with individuals in need of on the subway platforms, at prioritized end-of-line stations, and in subway cars. This does not include the ongoing work of responding to 311 calls and other outreach during daytime hours, which have reached thousands of New Yorkers. For these interactions, we can report that more than 700 individuals accepted services into shelter. Our work continues, and we look forward to collaborating with our partners in and outside of government to help New Yorkers in need in our subway systems. This administration is redoubling its efforts to serve and support New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness. The mayor's recent initiatives are focused on encouraging vulnerable New Yorkers to come in off the streets and subways and into safer settings. Additionally, this work is reinforced by this administration's commitment to aggressively expand our low barrier resources, such as safe havens and stabilization beds, which are dedicated to serving this population, and provide the critical capacity needed to bring individuals indoors and closer to support services. Regarding the city's latest interagency collaboration efforts to address encampments, the mayor has been clear from the onset that we are not going to abandon our neighbors who are suffering, particularly when the city has the ability to help and improve their conditions. It is our moral obligation to use the resources we have to help our fellow New Yorkers who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness and not just ignore our neighbors in need. It is critical that we provide services for our vulnerable neighbors who need our help. And thanks to this initiative, our city will become more equitable for all. At each cleaning, DHS outreach teams are there on the ground to connect New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness with services and help facilitate the connection to provide shelter, food, and support. As the mayor has stated, we will not be deterred from offering the help and services to our unsheltered neighbors that they deserve and are entitled to, all while ensuring that our public spaces remain clear and clean and available to all. We appreciate the committee Deputy Speaker recent acknowledgement about the effectiveness of our low barrier programs, such as safe havens and stabilization beds, which are specifically tailored to unsheltered individuals who may be resistant to accepting services or who may not be best served by other services, including traditional housing settings. That is why, as of today, we have approximately 3,000 specialized beds dedicated to serving the unique needs of New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And as I mentioned earlier, with the historical investment we are making, including funding for around 1,400 low barrier beds, which would bring the total of these beds to over 4,000, opening up more opportunities for our vulnerable New Yorkers and our neighbors to access our services and get the support they need and deserve. We will also want to take this opportunity to highlight the various shelter models used by DHS and our partners to support New Yorkers in need. All of our facilities, from dormitory shelters to safe havens, maintain strict protocols to ensure the safety of our clients. Our staff and providers receive the necessary training, some of which we have worked with the City Council to craft to ensure that we have the tools and knowledge to address any safety concerns and de-escalate matters in a professional manner. Specifically, looking at our dormitory settings and safety, all of our shelter sites have 24/7 security. We have cleared more than 90% of violations and have added tens of millions of dollars annually for programming for our clients to participate in. Moving on to legislation, the bills being heard today present several ideas that we are reviewing. As we continue these discussions, we encourage the committee to consider the fiscal and staffing resources that will be necessary to carry out these proposals and the impact on our agency's programming. Intro 212 proposes to update Local Law 37 of 2011, which requires a monthly report on emergency housing assistance usage and require a cover page listing the total number of all individuals utilizing emergency housing. We look forward to discussing this proposal further with the bill's sponsor to ensure we present an accurate view of clients in DHS shelter and other emergency shelters, while at the same time ensuring reporting does not duplicate pre-existing requirements. Intro 212 would require reporting on exits from city-administered facilities and financing, starts and completions of permanent housing meant for individuals exiting these facilities. This bill presents similar challenges as Intro 212. We want to ensure the reporting required by this bill is not onerous or repetitive of existing requirements. And again, we look forward to working with the sponsor to understand the intent. Lastly, today's pre-considered introduction proposes that the Department of Homeless Services and Human Resources Administration track and report data on rental assistance programs. We are reviewing the legislation and we look forward to discussing and clarifying the information being requested in this proposal, with the goal being to ensure the data's accuracy and efficiency. Based on the initial review, as currently draft, the bill would pose a substantial administrative burden on the agency, as it requires resource-intensive data collection and seeks information that is anticipated to be untraceable. As we close our testimony today, I want to briefly summarize our key takeaways on how the Adams administration is working to address unsheltered homelessness across our city. Homelessness is a decades-long challenge that has persisted due to many factors, from stagnating wages and a lack of affordable housing. And the Adams administration is laser focused on connecting unsheltered New Yorkers to the services they need to get back on their feet. Every New Yorker and elected official share the responsibility of proactively helping unsheltered New Yorkers, from taking a few minutes to contact 311 to help us identify an unsheltered neighbor, to helping us find and site shelter facilities across the 5 boroughs. Our outreach teams are out in the field 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, supporting New Yorkers experiencing unsheltered homelessness in our streets and subways. And we are not leaving any stone unturned in our efforts to bring them indoors with care and compassion they deserve. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today about our efforts to address unsheltered homelessness in our city. We look forward to partnering with the City Council on these efforts, and I welcome any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Council Members Brewer, Stevens, Aviles, Osei, Hudson, and Rustler, and that I want to give Councilmember Aviles an opportunity to share remarks on her intro today. Councilmember, can you unmute? Can somebody please unmute her? Thank you.
Great. Can you hear me? Fantastic. Thank you so much to the chair for the opportunity to provide remarks on this pre-considered introduction, a bill that I am proudly the prime sponsor of, and a bill which has previously been brought before the council, Intro 1020, by then Council Member Alika Ampry-Samuel. As everyone in the room with me knows today, the City Fighting Homelessness and Eviction Prevention Supplement is a critical rental assistance program for families facing eviction and homelessness. This bill would require the Department of Homeless Services and HRA to track and report to the council enrollment data on the FEPS program. It is just common sense if we are going to accurately gauge the effectiveness of the program and further prevent New Yorkers from becoming homeless. Data will help us illuminate how best as policymakers we might strategize to prevent homelessness in our city, and how we might modify the existing program to meet the needs of those enrolled. In addition to the reporting data required in this bill, would also allow us to see the impacts of recent rule changes, like the one that occurred this past December, that requires that the Department of Social Services to deduct utility allowance from the maximum rent and the housing voucher that the housing vouchers cover, leaving New Yorkers who are facing eviction to overcome what very much is an unnecessary hurdle. As the council member representing District 38, a largely immigrant community, I would propose one friendly amendment to the legislation before you today, and that is also to parse out data by primary language spoken by program participant. Adding this additional layer of detail may help us better look at what populations are most at risk in our city. I look forward to hearing the feedback. I did hear the commissioner mention concerns around a burden on the agency. Quite frankly, we should not be running any programs without sufficient data. And this is just a fundamental element of all the programming for us to make effective and efficient choices on what is functioning and producing the outcomes we need and what is not. And so I look forward to hearing further feedback from the advocates and program recipients in the room today regarding this legislation. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to put forward remarks.
Thank you, Councilmember Alviles, for your opening statement. I am now going to turn it back to Chair Ayala for questions for the administration. And then as a reminder to council members who may have questions, you can use the Zoom raise hand function, and we will be limiting council member questions to 5 minutes. So over now to Chair Ayala.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony here today. I think that this is an issue that, obviously I got a lot of calls of concern about, and we wanted to make sure, specifically in light of everything that has been happening in the city, that we were able to have this discussion, as quickly as possible. Because we share concerns. And I want to just, share for the viewing public that, the commissioner and I have had opportunities to have multiple discussions on this issue. And I believe that, you genuinely want to be helpful, and that, you want to work collaboratively to try to find solutions that work. But I want to share my, an impact statement of my own. I have a brother who has serious mental health issues, who's in and out of shelter because of that. And it becomes very difficult, as many people, who are viewing today may recognize, when you're dealing with a person with mental health issues, to keep them at home. Sometimes I'm just not able to keep him with me, because people would argue, well, why are you not, why don't you keep him? It's difficult. It is difficult. It's difficult for me. I could imagine that it's difficult for the staff. But right now, he's living with me because he feels so unsafe living in the shelter system. He has been punched in the face by security guards because his behavior has been erratic, which you would assume, right, that there's adequate training in the staff to recognize mental illness, to treat, to treat individuals that have a mental illness, and how to, how to approach them in a way that is useful. He has been threatened with a knife inside of the shelter system. And this is not, I'm not talking about weeks ago. I'm talking about like a couple of days ago. This continues to happen. And this is why we hear from New Yorkers that are unsheltered, day in and day out, that they don't want to be in congregate settings. And so the concern for us is that if we don't have enough stabilized or safe haven beds available, that we're going to see more and more displacement, and that's concerning. So there are going to be a bunch of questions today. I think that people are alarmed, specifically with the number of raids on the in the subway stations. And we've all heard the stories. They're horrible, of people living in the tunnel. We recently had a couple that was killed on the tracks a couple of days ago. They were living, somewhere in the tunnel, and no one knew. And unfortunately, we lost those 2 New Yorkers, and that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen in 2022. It should never happen. But this is where we are, right? So I really wanted to hear from you today. I get the encampment issue, and I think that this is the hot button issue that everybody's talking about, because we've all seen the videos on social media about, with the breaking up of the encampments and what appears to the viewing public as a very aggressive policing tactic to get rid of homeless people that are living on the street. That concerns me. One, because my understanding is that there has to be adequate notice given to the individual that a cleaning crew will be coming by on such and such day at such and such hour to clean the encampment, so that it allows the person enough time to take out their personal property without fear of having their birth certificates, social security numbers, Medicaid cards, medication thrown in the garbage. And we're not sure that that's happening. So I wanted to hear from you what your sentiment is on what exactly is happening, and how you feel the situation is going. Are we successful in placing people? I heard the number 700 at the press conference with the mayor, and so I don't know that number is accurate, and I wanted to kind of hear from you on what your take on that was.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, for your questions, and thank you for acknowledging that, this administration, and I'm going to speak on behalf, as I always will, Mayor Adams, we definitely care about individuals who are homelessness. We're not going to be the status quo of just walking by individuals and not addressing their mental health needs, their housing needs. That's not good government in any instance. And we're not going to be that type of government that's going to just promote that type of behavior. We know these are our neighbors. They're in our communities. They're somebody's brother, they're somebody's mother, they're somebody's uncle, they're somebody's relative, and they're our neighbors. So yes, I am committed as the commissioner for the Department of Homeless Services to ensure that we are out there doing that outreach. The staff are committed. As I shared my story, and I'm going to continuously to share it. I was once homeless. I watched my mother of 8 kids by herself struggle. It's not easy. There's a lot of challenges out there. And as government, we need to be there for those individuals who need our assistance. So, unfortunate with your brother with the incidents in shelter, we work with our shelter providers. We work with our security. As I said in my testimony, we do the de-escalation in a professional manner. We're continuously evaluating that process. When we hear these incidents, we definitely look into them and we course correct and we take action when needed. But the vast majority of our shelters, I know in the papers, like, oh, it's not safe. 95% of our unsheltered population is in shelter. We're out there each and every day encouraging individuals to come inside to receive those services. Really pleased that the mayor, the first mayor ever in New York City to make the largest investment in street outreach. Again, that's going to get our safe havens, our stabilization beds, our drop-in centers. Those are critical tools to build that trust with the individuals, to have them come in so we can provide the services they need so they can get on the path to be on the right footing. In regards to the in regards to the encampments, I'm going to have Assistant Commissioner Cox join in. I don't want to steal the thunder, but each and every time a person accepts our services, that's an opportunity for us to build trust with that individual. As I said, it's not a one size fits all. Everyone come to us with individualized challenges. I also had a brother who was homeless in the streets, mental health concerns, and then finally, he's now in a supportive housing environment, receiving those services. And my family and I are so happy. Is it completely done? No, but at least now he's inside. It took a long time to get him to go inside. As you know, Deputy Speaker, it's work, but it's worthwhile work. These individuals deserve our attention. They deserve the services that we have to offer them, and we're not going to walk away from them. Assistant Commissioner Cox, can you just chime in on the process, what we're doing with the encampments, and really explain how the outreach staff are there first before the cleanup occurs and right before the cleanup actually happens?
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. And hello, Deputy Speaker. Thank you for having us today. Just to reframe it, as the Commissioner said, the best solution to address the problem of unsheltered individuals experiencing long-term homelessness on the street is connection. Connecting them to services, treatment, care, and hopefully housing. And our job, everything we do, is to ensure that individuals have access to these services and that they can receive the care they need, and to put them on the pathway to hopefully permanent housing. We're trying to engage individuals at every level of their pathway out of homelessness. As the Commissioner said, I'll go into the details of the encampment process, but fundamentally, we have outreach teams involved in the process who are persistently, diligently trying to do transformative work. They're trying to be as thoughtful and strategic as possible in how they're approaching the work. And they're always tinkering with what's offered and in the ways in which they're offered. And fundamentally, we view every individual on the street as a crisis. Every engagement, though, is an opportunity to connect them, to get them inside. And every night off the street is a success. And so essentially, when the city encounters or learns of or receives a report about a condition on the street that needs to be addressed, or that's illegal, unsanitary, unsafe, we're trying to address it quickly and carefully, but with compassion and in a coordinated manner. Our role at DHS is to ensure that the unsheltered individuals living on the street have access to social services and housing. And they have access at every step of the process. They have access in every single engagement. And even while these conditions are being addressed. So really what that means is there's a couple key components. Number one is providing advance notice to the individuals, alerting them that there's going to be a cleanup operation. And then being on hand before the operation, during the operation, and then if need be afterwards. If somebody does not accept services, we'll continue to go back and re-engage them. And obviously we're always focused on preserving the relationships that we built with clients through this engagement, but we want to be there again at every step of the process. So we absolutely aim to give notice, and we almost always have given notice, at least 24 hours notice.
Is that an acknowledgement that there have been times where notice hasn't been given?
There may be particular emergency circumstances, but outside of that, the general process is to give notice for us in the encampment cleaning process. DHS goes and gives notice to individuals at least 24 hours in advance.
Okay. What would classify what you know as an emergency situation where notice wouldn't be given?
If I may, Assistant Commissioner, if I may jump in. Deputy Speaker, if we get notification that there's a location that's causing a harm to the individual or others, such as hypodermic needles, in mass that's there and needs to be cleaned, we would then go in, because we don't want, the general public or child to go by and be in that environment. So we would go in sooner than later and not wait for the, at least 24 hours.
Okay. I'm sorry, Assistant Commissioner Cox, were you done?
Yes.
I think that we agree, like fundamentally we agree. No one wants to see people out on the street. It's the way that we approach them, right? So connecting them to services is really important, but how we connect them is equally, important. And I think that, based on what we've seen, we're just not satisfied that we're doing it the right way. So I would like to know. I know that under the de Blasio administration, there were a couple of safe haven and stabilized beds that were already in the pipeline that have started to open, which is great. But theoretically, do we have enough stabilized beds today or safe haven beds today that are in non-congregate settings to accommodate the need of the number of individuals that are sleeping in the subways or out on the street?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, for that question. We have vacancies today that individuals can go into a safe haven or stabilization bed. When we're out there each and every day, each and every night, we're making that offer to individuals who are suitable for those type of settings. The mayor's historical investment of $171 million gives the city an opportunity to create additional housing in regards to safe haven and stabilization beds. We're on track. As the subway safety plan, we said we're going to create 500 additional safe haven stabilization. We're on track to meeting that goal. 1,400 additional by the end of this year. We will have 900 in the pipeline, with the balance coming in 2023. We're going to continue to work towards that goal. We're going to meet that goal because that's what the mayor has put in place, and that's what he has charged us with, and New Yorkers deserve it. And we understand that this is what we are being driven towards, and we're going to make sure we do it. It's a get stuff done administration, and we're going to make sure we get it done.
Do you know what the number of beds that are available today?
So in total, I'm going to ask Administrator Carter to jump in. But I believe we have 2,000 across the two areas of stabilization and safe havens. But Administrator Carter, you can join in, please.
Commissioner, we have a total of just over 2,700, and currently we have about 2,600 clients who are in the beds. Just over 1,600 in safe haven, 1,100 in saved. Our vacancy today is 131, and as the Commissioner says, we continue to put units on. We have opened towards the 500 for 34, and we will have by the end of the year meet the number we said we're going to meet, and 1,400 new investments of the 171.
You lost me a little bit. So we have 131 vacancies today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and out of the 2,000 plus that are currently occupied, Are those new clients, or are those pre-existing clients that had already been?
Some of those that we've brought in since the initiative started are coming into those beds, have come into those beds.
Okay. Do we know what the number of individuals that have accepted assistance is to date? I mean, we were at what, a month, 6 weeks into this?
Since the March 18th, 40 people have come in since the encampment, March 18th to present.
40 people have come in. Okay.
That's
So the mayor mentioned in his press event when we were announcing the $171 million allocation for additional beds, that a total of 700 individuals had been identified and had accepted assistance. Is that number not accurate?
That number is accurate, Deputy Speaker. That number pertains to the subway safety plan that came into place. So in the subway system, at end of line and in our engagement on the subways, 700 individuals said yes, accepted our services, and came into our shelter system. We are really proud of that number because, as you know, when we first started, initially, it was a single digit, but we knew that on behalf of our dedicated staff and our providers, as we continue to be out there and build trust with individuals and really explain to them, we develop a palm card as well that demonstrates these are safe haven stabilization beds. These are our traditional shelters. We're having that conversation day in and day out. Individuals, 700 individuals in our subway system said yes. We transported them to our shelter system. They accepted our services, and it really provided that opportunity to start building that trust.
I'm a little confused because it doesn't seem, the math is not adding up for me. We have 700 people that have accepted services in the subway, as part of the subway safety plan, but we only have 131 vacancies in, stabilized and safe haven beds available. So were those people placed in congregate settings, or were they placed in, where did you put them?
The individuals were placed in our shelter system, which is our dormitory style, which you categorize as congregate. I call it dormitory. Our safe havens, our stabilization beds, our drop-in centers.
Okay. What is the length of stay at a drop-in center?
Administrator Carter.
I'll get back to you on that, Deputy Speaker.
Okay, because my understanding is that a drop-in center has no bed. You're basically sitting in a chair waiting to be placed, right?
Yeah, drop-in centers are just the first low barrier where people are not yet ready to come into a traditional bed, whether it's a safe haven, a stay bed, or traditional shelter setting, so they can come in. It's the first entry for people who are beginning to build trust, and those who are not yet ready, we can get them into a drop-in center where they can get a shower, get food, and begin case management, right? So it's really is making that connection so they don't have to be in the street that particular night. We find that when they start building that trust, the next step can be moving to a safe haven or a stabilization bed or entering our system. It's just the beginning state of, yeah, I can come, but I'm not yet ready, and we have that available for them.
Okay.
Right, and the 700, Deputy Speaker, that 700 number is our dormitory, our safe haven, or our stabilization bed.
Okay, and of the ones that went into congregate setting, the dormitory style, do we know how many of them stayed?
We can get that information for you. We have it.
Yeah, because I think that one of the issues that we keep hearing from the impacted communities, like, look, I don't feel safe there, I'm not gonna go, which quite frankly, I don't understand how in 2022, and maybe this is a discussion, moving forward, why we're not looking at, and yes, listen, I am an advocate of, building more housing as opposed to building more shelters, but we're gonna need, right? I mean, we're a city that's mandated to house individuals, that are unhoused. So we're going to need shelters at some point, I don't know that we're going to need as many, but I don't understand why we're not investing money into retrofitting the existing sites so that they are more reflective of the need. It's very difficult, to live in a congregate setting. You're sharing space with people you don't know. You're constantly afraid that you're going to get attacked. You're constantly afraid that your property is going to be stolen. Many people report that they don't even sleep. They don't feel, mentally like they're exhausted. And you would have to be to accept living on the street or on the subway as an alternative option. I mean, I think that in and of itself, is a strong message that, we need to be mindful of, and we need to be listening to. And I think that's kind of where I struggle with all of this, is because I feel like we're not working, as smart as we can to really, create a comprehensive plan that looks at all of the complexities of homelessness in a way that is fruitful. So yeah, we can go out and we can break an encampment and we clean that street, hooray for us, and great for the community, because I also, I understand I have a responsibility to the entire community. So that means, the impacted unsheltered individual and the community at large that's complaining about that encampment. But if I am moving those people and they're telling me, council member, I will not go into the congregate setting, and I am still moving them and putting them in a congregate setting, then I know that the likelihood that they're going to leave through the back door and they're going to end up sleeping on another street is very high. We're seeing that now here. We're seeing that in my district. I have one of the largest public housing stocks in the city, and I have never, ever seen the number of homeless individuals sleeping in the hallways of my public housing developments as I have to date. People with mattresses, furniture. Ideally we would have one or two that would, go up to the roof, and we have people that have substance use disorder issues, and they, that happens. But to the extent that we're seeing it today, I've never seen it. So I wonder, right? As I would imagine that anybody would, are those individuals people that are coming, that are being pushed out of the of encampments on the street, that are now moving into into buildings? Are these people that are leaving the shelter system that we can't really that we're not necessarily tracking, right? So when we ask for tracking data, it's important, because that's how we gauge if we're being successful or not. So we want to be helpful. We want to be helpful. We want you to be successful. We want to make sure that every individual has some place to stay, where they feel safe, where they are being connected to the services and the resources that they deserve. But we want to do it in a way that is actually, efficient and effective. So I just want to put all of that out there, because I think that the perception is that, members of the council are a little bit too lax, right? We coddle people. It's not about coddling people. It's about being realistic. It does not benefit anyone if we're moving them from one place and putting them in another. And that raises a question for me. We have a program, it's actually an initiative, I don't know, it's a policy of DHS, that whenever an individual is cited on the street, in order to qualify for a safe haven or for a stabilized bed, they need to be cited a certain number of times, right? That policy, as far as I'm concerned, is still in use. So if we identify John Doe on the corner of 33rd and 3rd, and we've already seen him there 3 or 4 times, but now we've disrupted his encampment, and now he didn't accept services and he went somewhere else. Does the clock start all over again in order for him to qualify for these services if he's identified elsewhere?
So Deputy Speaker, you threw a couple of questions in there, trying to keep it all in my head, so I'll make sure I'm responsive to your questions. I'm going to start with the last, and I'm going to have Administrator Carter join in.
Thank you.
In regards to a placement into a safe haven and stabilization bed, the first interaction, we're doing that assessment. The outreach team is doing an assessment. The outreach team is doing an evaluation. The clinician that is there is doing the same to see what's best fit for that individual. We would not want to place someone in a safe haven in a single occupancy room by themselves if they present with serious mental health challenges. We want to make sure that person first is safe and healthy. There is no rule in this administration that you have to be seen a certain amount of time before you place. Each and every night, we do direct placements from the streets or the subway system into a safe haven or stabilization, if that's what's best for that individual when we do the assessment. And we're going to always look at what's best for that individual, because as I said in the testimony, not a one size fits all is not for everyone. If a person needs medical attention, we want to make sure that we're providing medical attention. If a person needs to get to a hospital, we want to make sure that person goes to a hospital and not just placed in a single room, which is not good for them, for us as a city as a whole. So to answer your question, you can actually go, if you're suited, from the streets, from the subway system into one of our safe havens, stabilization, or dormitory. If they're known to our dormitory in the past, we want to have that engagement to say, you still have a bed there. Would you like to go back? And Administrator Carter would join in. We go out at least once, twice a week. We're in the subway system. I invite the council members to join me as well. I'm out there 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, really engaging our neighbors, having them understand, showing them that brochure. There's a better way, there's a better space for you to be than to be on the streets or in our subway system. Administrator Carter?
Having just described what I described to you about the experiences with my own brother, right? That's not, like for individuals like you and I who are housed, it's easy to say that, but that's not the experience that those individuals that are living in those types of settings are describing. So I think that that's where I kind of I struggle with it, because there's a difference. There's a huge difference, and that I've never heard a single person say, listen, we have issues, like we need to we need to fix A, B, and C before we can get to D. Like no one has ever said that. And I think that that's kind of, it throws people off, because it gives the impression that we that everything is rosy and everything is perfect, and it's not. It is a hugely imperfect system. It is impossible to deal with all of the complexities that you have to deal with and be perfect. That we understand that, right? But we want there to be an acknowledgement, like, listen, people don't want congregate setting. They don't want it. They don't want it. They don't want it for a specific reason. What are those reasons? How are we addressing that? You have seniors living in congregate settings that are not getting resources. You have people with serious disabilities that are really vulnerable, because they have to have the one bed that's next to the electrical socket, because we're not equipped to deal with all of these issues in that type of setting anymore. And that's really alarming. But I just want to, because I know that my colleagues are going to have questions, and we have a host of people that are here to respond, to ask questions as well, and I guess to share their testimony on their experiences. Go ahead.
Deputy Speaker, I just want to just going to echo our commissioner in a couple of things. I just want to really acknowledge that, to steal the mayor's, what he says, that we are perfectly imperfect, and we're really working to do better in certain places. And certainly we understand that sometimes we need to look at the entire picture, but there are a couple of things I want to make sure that is clear. Chronicity about being seen multiple times, that's not one of the things that that's not true. It might have been in past administrations. That is not true. We are out engaging and getting individuals to safe haven stabilization beds as needed and as necessary. So that is happening. In terms of safety, and I think that there's the idea that dormitory style shelters are unsafe. The majority of our shelter system is, and people are marching with their feet and voting with their feet. And we have a small number of people who are unsheltered. And those are the folks who have had trauma and other situations that has happened with them. And we really need to engage them. And that's what Shane has talked about, the outreach multiple times, and we have to connect with them and do outreach. But every single day that they come in and go back out, for them to be in, for us, that is a success. And we continue to engage and go back out. And as they're with us in any one of our settings, be it, a dormitory or safe haven or stabilization bed, we have services, we have case management on site to really assess individual needs and to make those needs available for them. In terms of looking at those who are in NYCHA, what we have found over time is that individuals who are in NYCHA buildings have connections for those to some relatives, and we're working with some NYCHA. We have some MOUs that we do walking through NYCHA buildings with NYPD to try and engage individuals there. So we are looking at that. I do think that it's important to really recognize that those who are unsheltered, part of what our work is to connect them to benefits when they come into us. So I do believe that we serve those who have fallen through safety net, and we are the safety net of the safety net. And so we really need to help them come in to a stable housing place, help them to, get their documents, help them to really go through whatever, reset, because they've been through trauma, and get them ready to move to permanent housing, that the Commissioner Shane has talked about. And when they're ready to come in at any time, be it 2 p.m. on a Saturday or 2 a.m. on a Sunday, we're there, right? And so that's what why we're there, and that's the work we're doing every single day. And I do recognize that, we need to continue to do the work, but also, we have to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's with care and compassion, and the Commission is beating that into our heads. This is how we need to do that work. And so we'll continue to do that. And I hear the Commissioner says, we're out at night, and we're seeing that placement from, subway to stabilization or safe haven. And so we're doing that comprehensive work.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can go and hang out at one of the congregate settings and spend the night. I would welcome spending the night with you, Commissioner. We can go and hang out there and see what it looks like for, what it feels like to have.
Deputy Speaker, you know, I'm very collaborative, and I definitely want to be part of the solution. And I welcome, you and the other council members, to welcome your ideas and suggestions on what we can do. I also want to say I appreciate the fact that you acknowledge that we are a right to shelter city, that we definitely will need to create additional shelters throughout the city. We are looking at purpose-built shelters. As you said, we don't want to continue that practice of retrofitting into a building, but really looking at what's best for the community, what's best for our clients, what's best for the city as a whole. So I'm glad you acknowledge that, and that is our vision on how do we create purpose-built shelters throughout the city.
Okay, so I'll ask a couple of really quick questions, and then I'm gonna defer to my colleagues. How does DHS define safe haven? Because we saw in a recent announcement of a safe haven in the South Bronx, there were photos that were shown that looked like a smaller congregate setting as opposed to what we think is more in line with what we see as a safe haven, which is a smaller, maybe 1 or 2 beds per room. So is that, how does DHS define safe haven?
So safe haven is more of an intimate setting. It is a smaller units. We have our single occupancy, we have double, some is quadruple, but we have on-site services, medical services for those who actually need that service. When we do our assessment, we do our evaluation, we recognize that that particular individual would do better in a smaller setting. So throughout our safe havens, that's for those the low barrier locations. It's for individuals who need that more hands-on. Stabilization, that's for more independent. If we can refer a person for mental health services, for medical services, because they're more independent, then they'll be placed in that stabilization unit. That's why it's so important that we do that assessment and not just do a one-size-fits-all. It's having that conversation with the individual to see where they can most likely thrive more and trust us in that particular type of setting.
Now, what do you think is the optimal number of people per room in a safe haven?
I mean, it depends on the individual, right? So like I said, we have singles, we have doubles, we have some quadruples. The one we went to in the Bronx, our newest one, I believe what I saw there, Administrator Carter, we had rooms of, it fit four individuals into the quads.
All right, and how do individuals who accept referrals to a shelter, safe haven, or a stabilized bed or drop-in center get to the site?
We provide transportation. We provide transportation when we're out on the streets or in the subway system. Transportation is part of it. That's also part of the investment that the mayor has, is part of his 171 million. It's also for additional transportation. Okay.
And can you share which agencies are conducting the homeless outreach on the subways?
It's the Department of Homeless Services, Human Resources Administration, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and the State Department of Health. And I think it's State Mental Health.
So recently, Governor Hochul announced an expansion of the Kendra's law, and what part, if any, does DHS play in referrals for individuals that may qualify for those services?
So those are our clinicians, is primarily with the Department of Mental Health and Hygiene, but we also have our clinical staff within DHS. They're trained on 958. If an individual is identified as a 958, then that referral will be made to a hospital so they can be evaluated.
Okay. So there is because my concern with Kendra's law is that if an individual is being is being referred, what level of interaction are they having with a mental health professional out on the street? Is it like 1 contact, 2 contacts? Like, what does that look like?
Well, it could be 1 contact. If an individual is experiencing mental health challenges, real mental health challenges that raise to the level of a 958, then that person will be evaluated and transported to a hospital for an evaluation. We would not want to leave that individual, on the train or on the subway to be a harm to themselves or others. That's something I think everyone would be in agreement with, not to leave that individual to their own vices if we recognize that they qualify as a non-5A.
Yeah.
Commissioner, if I may, the clinicians that are doing that are trained through Department of Health and Mental Health. So they have additional training to perform those evaluations. So that's something that if they meet the standards, those are folks who are trained to do that.
Okay. What is the extent of the training? Do you know?
It's a DOHMH training that happens. I don't know specifically. I'm a licensed clinician, but I'm not trained to do that.
Yeah. Okay. What is a 958? Could you explain what a 958 is?
It's out of my realm, so I think we need to get back to you on what exactly that is. I don't want to speak out of turn exactly. It's a mental health standard law for removing those who are unsafe to themselves and others.
Okay. In regards to supportive housing, because I think we all agree that in order to move away from a shelter setting, period, we need to create more affordable housing, supportive housing options, being key. We really didn't see a real, commitment in terms of funding for the building of new supportive housing units in this year's budget, but curious to know what the progress has been, what progress has been made fulfilling the estimated 2,500 vacant supportive housing units that have been, that have come out in the press as having been available. And, there's, let me see. Yeah, basically want to know what the status of those beds is and why we're not filling them. That's a
Thank you,
significant
Deputy Speaker.
number.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, for that question. We are laser focused on filling our supportive housing vacancies. According to as you said, the press stated it was 2,500. We are down a little over 1,800 vacancies. We are working really closely with our sister agencies, and that is, it falls under the HPD, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, the Human Resources Administration, our providers. We're engaged with them on a daily basis. If I say daily, I know I've watched meetings occur because we're really looking at opportunities where we could streamline our processes, how we referring individuals to those units who are eligible for supportive housing. We're doing that on a day in and day out basis to ensure that eligible populations are moving into these vacant units. We recognize there is vacancies. The mayor has directed us to be laser focused on it. We're working across our agencies again to look at the streamlining processes. So we went from the 2,500, we now at 1,800, and we're going to continue to drive down who's eligible for those particular criteria. There's different criteria that you have to be eligible for particular units. And I don't want to go into that, it's a little weedy, but the ESHI, the regular supportive housing, who's eligible for state units. I directed the team, look at the processes, look at how we can break down those barriers, look at how we can streamline, but more importantly, look at who's identified and qualified for those units. And we're working with our wonderful providers. The providers are really, really great. I also want to say that 90% of supportive housing in New York City are filled. We have a 10% vacancy rate. Prior to COVID, it was a 5% vacancy rate. That 10%, because folks were not moving because COVID brought us a lot of different challenges. We're getting back to that 5%. And honestly, I would like to see it even lower because I wanted any unit that's available and folks are qualified for, I want them to move into those units. But again, that's in partnership with our providers. That's in partnership with our sister agencies. And we're doing that today. We have a really good plan in place. I'm actually seeing the numbers on a daily basis of folks moving into units, and I'm monitoring closely myself.
So you're down from 2,500 to 18 since March or since January?
Since the article was posted, since March.
Okay, since March. That's okay. That's pretty significant. And All right, and so would you say that it's more bureaucratic tape that's preventing people from accessing these units? Is it the eligibility criteria, or is it a combination of things?
It's a combination. We're doing an overall assessment on where there are opportunities for us to improve across, and also speaking with the state to say, you know, maybe some rules and regulations that's in place need to be adjusted, but we're going to have those conversations as we do our aggressive assessment. But right now, I have the team laser focused on identifying individuals who are eligible and working with the provider community to say we need to fill those units with our eligible population.
Absolutely, we have the beds available. There's no reason why, even when we have housing available, there's no reason why, you know, we shouldn't be referring folks. Okay, I'm gonna stop asking questions because I have if I have a few more, I'll come back, but I want to allow my colleagues to ask questions as well.
And I'm now going to turn to council members in the order that they raise their hand. So we will start with Councilmember Brewer.
That will codify these federal rights.
Starting time.
Ensure that states cannot restrict to provide safe.
Councilmember Brewer, do you have questions?
If the judicial branch won't stand up for reproductive health care for women.
It sounds like Councilmember Brewer may not be able to ask her questions at this point. So I will turn it now over to Councilmember Ressler.
Starting time.
Mute me again. Great, sorry about that. Sorry, we've got a press conference with the speaker on Roe v. Wade and the tragic leaked opinion. So firstly, I just want to thank Commissioner Jenkins, Administrator Carter, Shane, all of our outreach providers, Breaking Ground, BRC, CUCS, Goddard, Project Hospitality for your great work and your dedication. And I know your hearts are in the right place. But there are very serious issues here that need much greater attention and investment. And I also really want to thank our chair, Councilmember Ayala. Diana, your remarks a week or so ago at the mayor's announcement on the new investment in street outreach and stabilization and safe haven beds and drop-in centers was profoundly moving. Your leadership is extraordinary. You are the absolute right person to be leading this committee. And I really want to thank you for your line of questioning, particularly as it relates to the inadequacy of our single adult shelters. And I think that, Jocelyn, to say that a small number of people are unsheltered, I get that it's a small number of people as a percentage of the total homeless population in New York, but we have thousands of people who are on the streets. And I think that our counts underestimate the real numbers. So it's a significant crisis that we have on our hands of street homelessness. And I think it's important to acknowledge that the number one driver of street homelessness is the inadequacy of our single adult shelters. And too many of our single adult shelters, like Bed Atlantic and Wards Island, are causing more harm than offering help to people who are in them. So we have significant work to do. And I'm, as the representative for the area where these sweeps started by Meeker Avenue, to be going out to people who have been on the street and offering 30th Street as a housing solution is no solution at all. These folks have been through the shelter system. They do not feel safe in the shelter system. Safe havens are what's necessary. And I really want to applaud the mayor for making this major $171 million investment in safe havens and in stabilization beds, drop-in centers, and outreach workers. I do have some questions, and I'm just going to ask for brevity, even yes, no answers, if it's possible, just because I know I'm on the clock, and so if you don't mind. The outreach staff, my understanding is that we were currently at about 600 funded lines, but there are significant vacancies. Could you comment on how many of the 600 odd positions that were filled prior to this announcement, that are funded prior to this announcement, are actually filled?
But Councilmember, that's not a yes, no question. I got
that's not a yes, no, but that's a number. It's a number. It's a number. It's a yes, no, or numbers.
We have a little over 700 that's allocated. We are aggressively working with our provider to fill those vacancies, and we actually just authorize an increase in the salary for the outreach workers to
the $12 million will go toward increased salaries, not additional heads.
No, the $12 million will go towards additional heads. What I was saying is that we've recently increase the salaries for the existing staff and the new staff that's coming on board. The 12 million.
What's the current vacancy? The 12 million is exclusively for new heads?
The 12 million is part of the new heads and transportation.
New heads and transportation. So what was the salary increase that you all approved? I hadn't seen that.
I'll get back to you. I don't want to give an incorrect number in my.
And how many of those 700 positions are currently filled?
Yep, we'll get back to you.
Okay, because when I hear from the providers, I hear that there are significant vacancies and that we have a real challenge that because the salaries have been so low, they haven't been able to fill the positions. These are really hard jobs. And all of you who do this work have all of my empathy and respect because it's really, really tough. And these are folks who are struggling. And so I appreciate all of the effort, but I am concerned about what my understanding is on the vacancies. I'm happy to hear there's a salary increase that's happening. Would love more specifics.
And Councilmember Ressler, I just also want to give kudos to Mayor Adams and OMB, who helped us when we went to them and said, this is what we need to get done in order to increase our retention rate. It was approved. Okay,
good. Well, thank you. That's great to hear. I know it's not always easy to get OMB to cooperate, but David Greenberg's a good guy. So so appreciate
David Greenberg is a fantastic guy.
We can all agree about that.
Yes.
So next up, I was wondering, do you have locations yet for the 3 new drop-in centers?
We are evaluating that process now,
or neighborhoods that you're planning to prioritize.
We're looking into and assessing where those drop-in
Time
centers
expired.
and appreciate the council members' participation in that process as well.
Okay, if we can be helpful in the 33rd in any way, let me know. Councilmember Ayala, Chair Ayala, would it be okay if I continued on for one more minute if there's no one else waiting?
Yes, that's fine with me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'll try to be brief. I was wondering if you could provide a breakdown between stabilization beds and safe havens for the 140 million. I think it was 1,400 new beds. It was the number that was cited to go on top of the 2,700 or so funded now. Do you have a breakdown of what you're anticipating for safe haven versus day beds?
So we're anticipating that the vast majority will be safe havens, with the balance will be stabilization beds.
Okay, great. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you. And then I wanted to ask you 2 more questions. One is downtown Brooklyn, as you know better than me, has the highest concentration of street homeless individuals in the borough. Will this additional funding generate more dedicated outreach or kind of any hotspot oriented approach to address the street homeless conditions in our community and try and help connect those folks to housing and support?
So, Councilmember, thank you for that question. We're doing an assessment across the city. And of course, we're doing that assessment in regards to where are the hotspots, where are the additional outreach staff are needed. And we're going to have that open conversation as well with the council to say, this is where we're placing our additional staff. I'm so open to having that additional conversation with you, sir.
Well, if you're looking for a suggestion, I think you could pick your highest need area in each borough and say you're going to dedicate some additional staff specifically to those areas to try to make a real difference. And I think downtown Brooklyn certainly would meet that criteria in Brooklyn, and we could really use the help. And then the last question, and I really, really, really hope, Commissioner, that you'll consider it, because as you know well, we've got 2 new shelters opening in downtown Brooklyn for single adults in the next 3 months. All of the existing street homeless conditions are going to be blamed on those 2 shelters. We're doing everything we can to try and make those 2 shelters successful neighbors in our community. If we could address the existing street homeless conditions, it would help a great deal. And I think additional outreach staff and the additional safe haven capacity you're bringing on would really make a difference. And then just lastly, the mayor and you all have mentioned this 700 figure of folks that you've brought off of the subways, and I imagine through other means as well. Could you give us the number, though, of those 700 that are currently still in the shelter system?
We can get back to you. We can get back to you for sure. But Councilman, I also want to say I appreciate your ongoing collaboration. We've been in discussion in regards to the 2 shelters opening up in downtown Brooklyn. You've been very supportive, and I want you to know that this administration appreciates it. And me personally, as the commissioner for Department of Social Services, appreciate you and all that you're doing to ensure that the shelters are successful, and we're going to continue to be good, transparent partners.
I appreciate that, and I'm going to continue to be a welcoming council member and try to appeal to the best nature of of my community. But I have to say, we really do need help in addressing the street homeless conditions. And I think additional outreach workers, dedicated safe haven capacity to support the individuals in downtown Brooklyn that are in need would make a great difference. And you know, I'm not going to ever play a NIMBY card on you all. You know, it's our job as leaders to support the most vulnerable and to welcome them and to make sure that they're getting all the help and support that they need. But we also need DSS to step up and help us address the street homeless conditions in our community. And so any partnership there, any additional investments and collaboration would be greatly, greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you,
You're
Chair
welcome.
Ayala.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ressler. Turning it back over to Chair Ayala.
Thank you. I'm not sure that you're going to have these numbers, but I'm curious and I have to ask. Do we know what the number of homeless people who have been arrested or issued summonses as a part of the subway safety plan is?
No, I don't, Deputy Speaker. That would be more appropriate for NYPD.
Yeah, I kind of figured that, but I had to ask. Has the well, I'll ask two more questions regarding this, but regarding the sweeps, what is the process for safeguarding a person's individual's property, and can they get their belongings back?
Absolutely. I'm going to want Assistant Commissioner Cox, because he's on the ground and really see it each and every day along with his team. But as we're out there, we go prior to a cleanup. The staff are engaging the individuals, letting them know how we can help them. And that includes if they need storage, securing a voucher for storing their personal belongings that's valuable to them. We have that conversation with individuals in making sure that, you know, these are your valuables and the city is here to help you secure those valuables. Assistant Commissioner Cox can give a little more detail.
No, that's right. As the commissioner was saying, you know, a lot of our engagement, it frames a lot of our engagement as well. In the lead up to a cleaning, during the cleaning, and again after is the items. And as the commissioner said, we discuss ways that they can access storage via through HRA. And then during the cleaning, some items have indeed been vouchered through the process. But it is a continuous conversation we have with clients, even in separate and apart from the cleanings. Anything that will get anyone inside, if the items are a barrier to getting somebody inside, then that is something we concentrate on and work with clients around.
Yeah, and what about language accessibility? Are you guys, you know, translating documents into other languages, or how, you know, do you have staff available that's bilingual?
Yes, we have the cleaning notices. We have them in LL30 languages. Yes, and absolutely, all the outreach staff have access to a language line as well as other language resources. We want to absolutely make every effort to engage everybody in the language that they prefer.
Okay, and I'm sure the discussion will come up again at the executive budget hearing, but do you know what, do we know what has the administration calculated the average cost of each street sweep given the large presence of police and sanitation workers, and how many city employees are on site at each sweep?
Yeah, Deputy Speaker, we have to get that information, can definitely be discussed at the exec budget hearing. We don't have that today.
Okay, I appreciate it. I want to recognize that we've been joined by Councilmember Riley. And I have three more questions. How many, can you tell us how many, well, what is the average amount of time that is currently taking DHS to process a city FEP's apartment from the moment that the client reports that they have secured an apartment to check pickup?
So as with any normal New Yorker, I said this story to staff the other day. You know, I was looking for an apartment for my daughter, and just to go through the application, the interview, getting documents together, pay stubs, it took around 3 or 4 weeks. So it's a process that we have to go through. You know, our clients, some of our clients, not all, because I don't want to put a blanket statement, some of our clients require additional assistance with obtaining documents. And that's where we step in to ensure that we provide that individual with documentation. If they need pay stubs, if they need a budget letter, if they helping them with the application process, getting them ready for the interview, that takes time. So what we're evaluating, what our results are showing, that it takes anywhere between, I think, 11 and 16 days from start to finish. Once the place is identified, getting the documents ready, that's happening. When the application process is completed, we are turning those benefits, the checks around within 3 days. Because we want to make sure that that person moves into a unit as quickly as possible.
That's pretty good. Do we know how many move outs occurred each month from September 2021 to April 2022?
I have that information. I don't want to hold you up, but I can definitely get back to you for sure.
Can you ensure that it's disaggregated by household size and by borough? That would be helpful.
We would do our best, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Okay, final question. Can you tell us how many staff members does DSS have to process city FEP's pre-clearance and applications?
I believe we have, I think it's 24 individuals that's dedicated. We continue to, fill our vacancies as well, because across the nation, there are vacancies, and, we have the same challenges, with retention rates. But the vacancies that we have, we are aggressively trying to fill to ensure that, we are providing top-notch service to New Yorkers. But I believe, to answer your question, I think it's like 24 individuals dedicated to the pre-clearances.
Actually, I have one more question regarding the drop-in centers. You mentioned that you're opening 3 new drop-in centers.
Yes.
Do we know when those will be online and where?
We don't. We're doing an assessment as to where they will be open. And as I said with Councilmember Ressler, we are doing that assessment, and we will make sure that we're going to engage you, Deputy Speaker, when we finalize and say this is where it's going, and in addition to wherever we're going to cite those with that particular council member. Okay.
And do we know when they go online?
We don't, because it was just announced, so we're excited about it, and we want to make sure we give a thoughtful process as to where they should be.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for your testimony today and for answering all our questions. And again, I look forward to having a supportive working relationship with the agency, because our intentions are very similar. And thank you. I hopefully you can keep somebody behind to listen to the panel.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I appreciate you and your leadership.
Appreciate you.
All right.
Thank you to all the members of the administration for your testimony today. We are now going to move on to additional public testimony. As a reminder, all public testimony will be limited to 2 minutes. After I call your name, please wait a brief moment for the Sergeant at Arms to announce that you may begin before starting your testimony. The next panel in the order of speaking will be Karim Walker, Ashley Belcher, and Shams DeBaron. We are now going to begin the next panel, starting with Karim Walker. Over to Karim. And just a note that Karim and Ashley are together and will be testifying one after the other.
Starting time.
All right, I'm going to go first. Good afternoon, members of the City Council. My name is Ashley Belcher. I'm an outreach and organization specialist at Human.NYC, a homeless advocacy group. In my 10 years of being street homeless, my experience with outreach teams individually has been very uneventful. The main times that an outreach worker would stop to talk to me would be while I was asleep or trying to get food. I would be asked if I needed to go to a shelter right then and there. Not one time did they have water or any type of food. Also, anytime they would talk to me, there was no real reliable way to reach the same person who I just spoke to. No cell number, no email, and no real information about permanent housing. In my years of being street homeless, I would also have to endure NYPD approaching me with BRC outreach. I feel no homeless person should have to be woken up outside by police, even if outreach is beside them. It's uncomfortable and it makes the situation worse for the overall outreach team. It's a more aggressive approach, which leads to a negative outcome overall. If I was able to conduct an outreach team, not only would I bring food and or water when I spoke to someone, I would make it my first priority to give people contact information for ways to ask questions and know where to get food and information on city FEPS vouchers and clothing drives. Anything to help them get back into track to society and on their feet. That approach is how you gain trust. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony, Ashley. I'm now going to turn to Karim Walker. Or to Karim.
Starting time.
Yeah.
Mr. Walker, you may begin.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. The crackdowns and the aggressive sweeps of the city's homeless population, which we all know are a continuation of the previous administration's policy with addressing homelessness, is a wrong-headed attempt by the city to address homelessness. That goes without saying. But it also should go without saying that homelessness is a problem that has a very simple solution: housing. The city has the available housing necessary to house every homeless person in the city, but lacks, for whatever reason, the political will to do so. Mayor Adams has shown no real tangible interest in addressing homelessness, but rather governing in reaction to what will score him the most political browning points, politically speaking. And he's made that, and these sweeps have made that very clear, have made that very evident. These clearances, where you have cops, sanitation workers, outreach workers, basically descending upon homeless encampments and destroying everything in sight, and have proven that which seem to target certain parts of the city, such as Anarchy Row and the Lower East Side, East Village, with the goal of getting people into the shelter system. Then the only thing that they hope to accomplish is just to embarrass homeless people and break their spirits. We can do better than that, than just harassment, intimidation, and the constant fear of arrest when it comes to helping our homeless neighbors. They deserve a home, and they deserve a city committed to making sure that happens. This brings me to my main point: how we transition people from the streets to a home the use of safe havens, which some of you may know are less restrictive versions of the shelters, has proven effective. But, and this is a big but, they are not designed as congregate shelters.
Time expired.
Okay. People will be more likely go into a safe haven if they feel like they know there's going to be at most 1 or 2 people per room instead of 24 people. We're demanding that the mayor and the city council put that language into any and all future contracts with homeless shelter providers to make sure that these safe havens are working the way they're supposed to work, to make sure that they're low entry, that they're less restrictions, fewer restrictions, excuse me, and that they can go forth and they can put people on the path to getting a home of their own.
Thank you, Kareem. That's a really good idea.
Thank you, Karim, for your testimony. Now going to turn to Shams DeBaron.
How you doing? I'm looking up. I'm going to read my statement. All right. First of all, greetings, everyone. I'm going to try to read it fast, so get it. I want to say I appreciate being here and hope that what I say can be beneficial to all of you and help you make informed decisions based on this testimony from a directly impacted person such as myself. As someone who grew up in the foster care system from the age of 2, started experiencing homelessness at the age of 10, and was permanently discharged into the streets at the age of 12 without a safety net. I know very well the experience of being homeless, of being vulnerable, of sleeping in the streets, on the subways and buildings and other places where where the threat of danger was a constant. As a child, can you imagine the trauma of being targeted by pedophiles and predators, and what I had to do to ensure my safety and protection from such? Suffice it to say that my life was no crystal stair, and my story would make a brass monkey cry. Yet with all that I've been through as a child and young adult is my experience as a single father raising my son in a family shelter system that is the most traumatic. This experience has been so traumatic that I very rarely share that experience. And I have yet to heal, my son has yet to heal from the other failure of this city to do the right thing by us. I'm here doing this work not because I represent some well-funded nonprofit or I'm someone with a political agenda or because I want to be in the press as the homeless hero, but because as a trauma-informed activist, I never want for another human being to experience what I have and so many others who are experiencing or have experienced homelessness. and housing insecurity. I've been working nonstop to change things from the top down to ensure that this city is working towards eradicating homelessness. Let me be clear. While I have several goals, I can say that at the top of my list is getting this city to begin moving away from the congregate shelter models to a reimagined shelter to be physically a holistic environment with services on site along with therapeutic programming. The previous way of outsourcing the services offsite is something that is not beneficial to residents in shelters. Every congregate shelter I've been in, I consider to be a drug den and a haven for criminal activity. It is a breeding ground for mental illness and substance abuse. We have to move away from this model because it is unappealing to anyone experiencing homelessness, and it is inhumane and unhealthy. Low barrier, safe haven, and stabilization beds are a better option, and we have to use and provide services on site there as well. I would like for the city to acknowledge that the homelessness issue in this city is actually a crisis, and we as a city should be mobilizing all resources to combat this and ultimately reduce homelessness and end homelessness in New York City. With all of the people now in court facing eviction, I can guarantee you that if you do not move on this with the urgency that is needed, you will face something that you have never seen in terms of homelessness. The people who will enter your shelters are people who have never experienced homelessness, men, women, and children. The shelter system is already overwhelmed with people. The streets, the projects, hallways, the tenement hallways, the subways, they're all overwhelmed. So as I close, I want to say that I'm optimistic that the mayor and his agencies are doing as much as they can to address issues and fix this broken system. But where I get a little concerned is when I see the focus so much on getting people into shelters and continuing the building of what I call a shelter industrial complex. We need to move away from that. I don't have to tell you that housing is the answer. I want to hear more and see more of how we are going to access permanent and supportive housing. More of how we would eliminate the barriers preventing people from transitioning from being homeless to being placed into housing. I have been and will continue to work with the mayor and all of you in whatever way I can to address the issues. And a lot of work I know is being done and more must be done. And I commend the administration for moving quickly within a short amount of time to address these issues and for listening to not just the people that they have around them, but people like myself, and allowing us to have a seat at the table, a voice in the discussion and a hand in the decision making. And I would want for the city council, lastly, and the mayor and the state government to work together to address this issue, but also to continue to allow us to have a seat at these tables because our voices matter. Thank you. And thank you for the extra time.
Thank you, Shams, for your testimony. And thank you to this entire panel for your testimony today. I'm now going to turn to our next panel. Our next panel will be in the following order: Jacqueline Simone, Joshua Goldfein, Catherine Trapani, and Tiara Labrada. Again, our next panel will be in the following order: Jacqueline Simone, Joshua Goldfein, Catherine Trapani, and Tiara Labrada. Over now to Jacqueline Simone.
Starting time.
Thanks. I'm unmuted, correct? Great. Thank you to Chair Ayala and the council for this important hearing and for the opportunity to testify. My name is Jacqueline Simone, and I am the Policy Director at the Coalition for the Homeless. We are submitting more extensive written testimony jointly with the Legal Aid Society, but I wanted to highlight some key recommendations. The solution to homelessness is housing. The city should invest in affordable permanent housing where our homeless neighbors can reside in peace, away from the elements and other dangers on the street. We implore the city to immediately offer real permanent housing and safe private shelter options to people, and to cease these cruel, pointless, and ineffective sweeps. Mayor Adams must cease encampment clearing operations and street sweeps and focus instead on connecting people to resources they want, including low barrier shelters and permanent housing. Prohibit NYPD from responding to 311 calls requesting assistance for homeless individuals, and remove NYPD from all homeless outreach functions. halt the deployment of additional police in response to homeless people located in transit facilities and trains, implement the CCIT NYC campaign's proposal for non-police responses to mental health crises, adopt a client-centered harm reduction approach to outreach for unsheltered homeless individuals, as Ms. Belcher said, including trained peers on outreach teams and equipping each team with essential items such as socks, hand sanitizer, menstrual products, backpacks, clothing, and coats. Ensure notices are translated into multiple languages in compliance with Local Law 30 and provide required interpretation during outreach and other interactions with unsheltered New Yorkers. Contrary to the testimony today, we have not seen these translations happen in actual sweeps. Open at least 3,000 new safe haven and stabilization beds in single occupancy rooms and offer them to all unsheltered homeless individuals, with a focus on expanding the number of these facilities for women and transgender or gender nonconforming individuals, and increase drop-in center capacity citywide. Allow individuals with disabilities or chronic severe medical issues to enter safe without first proving they have been on the streets for a certain length of time. May I have a few more seconds to finish?
Continue.
Okay. Open a sufficient network of public restrooms and 24-hour warming and cooling centers throughout the city with proper air filtration and ventilation, appropriate safety protocols, and adequate personal protective equipment. Administratively clear all summonses for so-called quality of life offenses issued to people as a result of their homeless status. Expand the number of overdose prevention centers and ensure that life-saving harm reduction services are readily available to all New Yorkers, rather than targeting places with hypodermic needles for sweeps. We should be engaging with people and connecting them to harm reduction services. Expand access to low barrier physical and mental health care, including virtual care and street medicine, and avoid characterizations of homeless people that stereotype them as mentally ill and violent. Thank you so much for the council's commitment to these issues and for the extra time.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for your testimony. I'm now going to turn to Joshua Goldfein for testimony.
Thank you.
Starting time.
I'm Joshua Goldfein. I'm a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society and the Homeless Rights Project. We are counsel to Coalition for the Homeless, and we are submitting to this hearing joint written testimony with Coalition for the Homeless. So we endorse everything that Jackie just said in summarizing that testimony. We also want to confirm that we support all three pieces of legislation that are before the committee, and we thank the Deputy Speaker and the members of the committee and staff for preparing this hearing today to address these important reforms that are necessary. I think a theme that we have heard throughout the hearing today has been that the solution is clear, it's obvious, it's well known, it's very simple. It's to provide people with permanent affordable housing. And then we won't have to even discuss many of the issues that are currently in dispute here. If people are offered something that they will accept, then that's the solution to getting people off the streets. The converse of that, which we've also seen based on all available evidence that we're all familiar with now, is that the sweeps don't work, right? The current practices have been carried out by the prior administration and this one thousands and thousands of times. And the result has been that people move or return to the places where they were. If we've had thousands and thousands of sweeps and we still have thousands of people on the street, it's very clear that what we're currently doing is not working and is a huge waste of resources. And that's why the measures that are discussed in our testimony would be appropriate to solve the problem in the interim. But of course, the ultimate solution is affordable permanent housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joshua, for your testimony. I'm going to turn now to Catherine Trapani for testimony.
Starting time.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Trapani, the Executive Director of Homeless Services United, a coalition of 50 nonprofit, mission-driven organizations serving New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs. Thank you for holding this important hearing. At HSU, we are proud of the work our member agencies do day in and day out to support New Yorkers experiencing homelessness. We thank the Council for your work in advocating for appropriate resources and comprehensive solutions to meet their needs. While there have been a lot of new efforts touted in press releases about how best to steer persons living on the street into shelters or perhaps just out of sight, we know that the best way to get people inside is to offer them the kinds of placement options they want to go into. I'm grateful to the leadership of the Council to advocate for additional funding for safe haven and stabilization beds to create these types of resources, and I'm pleased to see Mayor Adams include funding in the executive budget for them. It would be incredibly helpful if all members of the Council could work with our members, DHS, and local community boards to welcome these new facilities in neighborhoods across the city. We know what works, and we know that well-run shelters make good neighbors. If you want folks off the streets and coming inside, every community must do their part to welcome new shelters and safe havens to support those who need them. Recent cancellations of 2 projects, or 3 rather, as of this morning, caving to NIMBY pressure, does not bode well to meet these goals. And if we're serious about doing this work, it cannot continue. More outreach is not the answer if there's no beds to refer people to. Next, if we're going to have this many new outreach teams and initiatives, coordination is key. Clients being repeatedly swept by police are making people feel less safe, and the communities they build are being destabilized. Several teams chasing people offering services is overwhelming. And if you do make headway, only to have your clients swept outside of your catchment area, service continuity is near impossible. We have several suggestions regarding areas of opportunity for both the city and state to employ to improve coordination between their overlapping outreach initiatives, details of which will be emailed in our written testimony. Hospitals, mental health systems.
Time expired.
May I continue? Thank you. Hospitals, mental health teams, outreach teams operated by DHS nonprofits and faith providers all must be able to share information and work together to identify opportunities for clients to come indoors and enroll in programs that they might find useful. The client's needs should always be at the center of everything that we do, and seizing opportunities at natural points of engagement will reduce churning through and between systems to help people actually get inside. You'll also be hearing more from us about this in budget testimony later this cycle, but critical to our success is having a fairly compensated workforce to fill those vacancies that Councilmember Ressler spoke about. We have made some progress on the outreach teams, but our shelter staff have not received any meaningful increase, and those vacancies in critical positions like housing specialists, security, and the like are a real problem for us. Additionally, concerns at DHS about their own pegs and hiring freezes, which has slowed down the processing of rental assistance and other initiatives. So we really want to see some progress in the budget on wages for everybody. Finally, I really want to thank the Council for introducing the legislation before the committee today regarding reporting. It is imperative that at the dawn of this new administration that we have a real clear baseline for where we are and where we hope to go, and we strongly support all of the bills being introduced and have some suggestions on how to strengthen them further, which will also be emailed at the conclusion of the hearing. Thank you very much for your work and attention to this critical issue, and look forward to working with you, and thank you for the extra time.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for your testimony. I'm now going to turn to the last panelist in this panel, Tiara Labrada.
Starting time.
Hello, Chair Ayala and members of the committee. I'm Tiara Labrada, the Associate Director of Advocacy and Outreach at the Supportive Housing Network of New York. I'm going to apologize in advance because I know my testimony is going to go just a bit over 2 minutes. Our members provide housing and support services to people exiting shelter or street homelessness. With the help of tens of thousands of city contracted human service workers, our members serve more than 35,000 formerly homeless individuals and families in the 5 boroughs. In response to our members' concerns last year over the lag in referrals from the HRA, we conducted an informal survey where we determined that there were at least 2,500 units sitting empty. We took these findings and concerns to the city and are grateful that the administration has worked collaboratively with us to address this issue, but there is still much work to do. While we have been working to streamline procedures, the city also needs to invest the financial resources into the systems, human capital, and support services needed to create a fully functioning referral and placement system. We are encouraged by the $3.5 million in FY22 and $5.8 million in FY23 in the executive budget for expediting supportive housing placements at DSS, but additional action is needed to address the current crisis. The city should do the following. 1, match the federal investment into the Coordinated Assessment and Placement System, also known as CAPS. CAPS determines eligibility and makes recommendations for various housing options. Although the city has developed a sophisticated system, the majority of the work to move someone from shelter into supportive housing, including reporting and confirming the vacancy, matching eligibility, and scheduling an interview, is still being done manually. If the city invested in this system, we could speed the process exponentially. 2, institute a cost of living adjustment for supportive housing staff. Chronic underfunding of our sector has led to a staggering 20% staff vacancy rate within the supportive housing workforce. We are facing a real recruitment and retention crisis, which is a primary factor impeding our ability to move quickly people from shelter or the street into permanent supportive housing. Recently, the governor announced a 5.4% COLA increase for the sector. This means that state contracted staff working directly alongside city contracted staff will see an increase in their wages while their colleagues get nothing. This is unconscionable. The city needs to at least match the state's 5.4 annual increase. And lastly, invest in mobile treatment teams for supportive housing residents. As a result of the pandemic, the mental health and substance use services that our community need have only intensified. An underfunded and understaffed supportive housing program struggle to keep up. Investments in additional mobile treatment teams, which include medical and behavioral health professionals, as well as peers, specifically targeted for supportive housing tenants, are necessary. You'll see some longer explanations in our written response. And I want to thank you, Chair Ayala, and the members of the City Council for your continued support and recognition of the need for supportive housing and the support of our workforce. Thank you.
Thanks, Tiara, for your testimony. Chair Ayala, do you have anything you want to add for this panel?
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to add anything, but I just wanted to thank the panelists for sticking it through the entire hearing and for continuing to be a voice for those that need us to be their voice, right? And so thank you for the work that you do.
Thanks again to this entire panel. I am now going to call on our next panel. Our next panel will be in the following order: Patrick Boyle, Lauren Galloway, and Deborah Berkman. So we'll begin again. The order of testimony will be Patrick Boyle, Lauren Galloway, and Deborah Berkman. Beginning now with Patrick Boyle. Over to Patrick.
Starting time.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you to the chair for giving us the opportunity to deliver this testimony today on a really, really important topic to Volunteers of America. My name is Patrick Boyle. I'm an assistant vice president here with Volunteers of America, housing developer, human services organization with a mission towards ending homelessness in the greater New York area. And that's really our charge. So, as has been expressed throughout this meeting, the unsheltered homeless, really run on a spectrum. There's really no one type of individual or one approach, but we do know through our experience, we run a safe haven, we run an assessment shelter, we run a variety of transitional housing as well as permanent supportive housing. So we know kind of through that spectrum, things that work, and we do applaud the council and the administration, with leadership from the chair and others on the additional funding for the safe haven and stabilization beds, which are an important kind of emerging model, for a low barrier entry that is really helpful for certain people that for a variety of justifiable reasons, find themselves resistant to other kinds of shelter. It's a fact that more people than ever are coming through our assessment shelters and in fact through our entire spectrum of housing with really severe mental health concerns. So we need to find a better way to, link hospitals, communication with the sites, with the agencies to make sure people are getting the help they need and to find other ways to fund mental health professionals really at all the sites. We have them at some, but we really need people on site to make sure that people's mental health concerns are being addressed. And finally, it's been said by many other speakers, but really all the recommendations you're hearing today, they will fail without cost of living adjustments and just pay for human service workers. You can have all the best policies and processes in the world. If the people aren't funded appropriately, we'll continue to lose staff at high levels. We can't staff these programs appropriately. And, we and other providers will stop going for opportunities, that the city puts out if they're not going to be funded at levels that are above poverty wages for our staff. So we thank the chair with your leadership on that, throughout. And we really, really need to see that in the budget that's coming up first and foremost. So thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, and thank you for raising that because that's an important part of all of this entire conversation, right? Staff is necessary to do the work, and we need to properly compensate them. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Thank you for your testimony, Patrick. I'm now going to turn to Lauren Galloway. Over to Lauren.
Starting time.
Good afternoon. My name is Lauren Galloway, and I use she, her, and hers pronouns, and I'm the advocacy coordinator for the Coalition for Homeless Youth. The Coalition for Homeless Youth has advocated for the needs for runaway and homeless youth for over 40 years. We're comprised of 65 providers of services for youth across New York State, specifically with 29 members here in New York City. Thank you, Chair Ayala, and the rest of the committee for holding today's hearing, for the council's ongoing support of youth experiencing homelessness in New York City. I'll be submitting longer written testimony about the crisis of youth homelessness and our full recommendations, but will focus my verbal remarks on the Intro 211, Intro 212, and 1077. However, before I talk about the legislation, I would like to echo the recommendations made by our members at Safety Net Projects, Legal Aid Society, as well as our allies at the Coalition for Homeless and New Destinies regarding the treatment and needed support for people living in the streets. When we as a city treat anyone as less than, specifically those that live on the street, we are doing harm. The harm includes to youth and young adults experiencing this homelessness. We cannot solve homelessness without housing, and this administration is simply moving people out of sight does nothing but harm. So just to go into Intro 211, we fully support this bill. Unsheltered homeless youth experiencing unjust experiences daily, especially in terms of housing. We need to create a positive impact in the way we track exits from DYCD systems for homeless youth and young adults, because there is no one size fits all form for housing stability. And we need to have an idea of the numbers of people who are in need of housing without speaking for what housing looks like for them. As far as Intro 212, we are also fully in support of this bill. Homelessness is an experience, not a system, and we need to start by reporting it in that way. So Intro 212 will require the city to have one census for people experiencing homelessness from all systems. So Intro 212 would be a step towards changing this in addition to capturing other important data sets that would help us as a city identify.
I'm expired.
Is it okay if I keep doing my final thoughts?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. But identifying critical gaps in our approach in meeting the needs of youth and young adults. And lastly, for 1077, we're fully in support of this bill. For far too long, homeless youth were not eligible for vast majority of vouchers. But since passing of Intro 2405, youth now have access to city FEPS vouchers, gaining permanent housing. So without gaining a full and transparent account of those, using rental census, we cannot understand the scope of the issue. When referring to the system is slowing and flowing, we have to stop and ask what youth are experiencing and not only do that in a brief time as possible. Thank you so much. And I look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you for the extra time.
Thank you for your testimony, Lauren. Now going to turn to Deborah Berkman for testimony, and Deborah will be followed by the next panel, and I'll call them now just so everyone has a heads up. The next panel following Deborah Berkman will be Gabriela Sandoval-Requena, Oksana Mironova, and Beatrice Simpkins. So I am now going to call the last panelist in this panel, Deborah Berkman.
Starting time.
Thank you very much. Chair Ayala, council members and staff, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Deb Berkman, and I'm the coordinating attorney of the Shelter Advocacy Initiative at NYLAG. Most of my clients are those experiencing unsheltered homelessness. In any discussion about unsheltered homelessness, the most critical point to emphasize is that people do not choose to sleep outside. Rather, they're forced to because available shelter cannot accommodate their needs. While sleeping outside, my clients have been subject to dangers that are just too numerous to recall. My clients are regularly robbed and assaulted while sleeping. One of my clients witnessed another man he slept outside with have lighter fluid poured on his foot and set on fire. My clients are woken and harassed by police officers and are often arrested for trespass and for other trivial offenses that essentially criminalize homelessness. They're food insecure and they're malnourished. Most of my clients experiencing unsheltered homelessness are in chronic pain from sleeping outside or in other spaces not meant for sleeping. My clients suffer from skin condition due to exposure to the elements, and almost all of them have numerous chronic illnesses. If they didn't suffer from mental illness prior to becoming street homeless, the trauma of sleeping outside and being constantly on alert has caused most of them severe anxiety.
The barrier for many of these clients coming inside is that the vast majority of the DHS single adult shelter system is in congregate settings or dorm settings, which can have as many as 100 people sharing a room. And almost all of my clients clients experiencing street homelessness stay outside because they can't live in congregate shelter due to past trauma or mental illness. These people would, and they do come inside when they're offered a semi-private or a private room in a safe haven or stabilization placement. But there are far too few of these placements, leaving thousands of people who are willing to come inside without a viable option other than sleeping outside. The clear solution is for the city to significantly increase single room safe haven and stabilization bed capacity. And although these assignments are more costly, once clients come inside and are able to be stabilized, DHS will likely have a much greater success at transitioning people into permanent housing. Additionally, I have longer comments, but I will submit them via writing. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you to this entire panel for your testimony. I'll now call up our next panel. Our next panel will be in the following order: Gabriela Sandoval-Requena, Oksana Mironova, and Beatrice Simpkins. Over now to Gabriela.
Starting time.
Good afternoon, Deputy Speaker Ayala and members of the Committee of General Welfare. Thank you for your leadership and for the opportunity to testify on behalf of New Destiny Housing. My name is Gabriela Sandoval-Requena, and I am the Senior Policy Analyst at New Destiny. Our mission is really to end the cycle of homelessness and abuse for domestic violence survivors, and we do this by developing housing for homeless survivors, assisting those who are fleeing abuse to obtain subsidies and find apartments, and by advocating on more housing resources. And New Destiny is also a co-convener of the Family Homelessness Coalition. We'd like to express support for all the interests presented today, especially Intro 121 and Intro 211, which will increase transparency and accountability to all city shelter systems by centralizing shelter census data and requiring all systems to report on exits and more. It is long overdue for the city to create one combined census of all 5 shelter systems that shows the true scope of homelessness. We simply cannot solve a problem that we failed to measure correctly. While Local Law 37 of 2011 requires city agencies to produce monthly reports on utilization, there is a significant lack of uniformity in the methodology and the frequency. This inconsistency makes it impossible to combine the various reports into one census that counts all New Yorkers experiencing homelessness. And as a result, agencies, legislative leaders, the press, and advocates inevitably focus attention, policy solutions, and resources on the HS, which is the largest, most visible system, at the expense of the thousands of New Yorkers, including domestic violence survivors and youth living in other shelters. Capturing good exit data is also important so that the city can better monitor how housing stock is being used to house New Yorkers' most vulnerable residents and track recidivism trends, etc. We'd also like to use this opportunity to thank the council for their preliminary budget response and urge the mayor to fulfill his promise to invest the $4 billion per year to fund a comprehensive affordable housing plan, including $2.5 billion for HPD.
Time expired.
Just a few more seconds. Thank you. And the number one solution to the homelessness crisis is permanent, affordable housing, like many of the advocates today have echoed. On behalf of New Destiny, I would like to thank, again, the council for the opportunity to testify. We will be submitting a more extensive written testimony and look forward to continuing to work together. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gabriela. It appears that Oksana is not on the Zoom right now, so we will move on to Beatrice Simpkins. Over to Beatrice.
Starting time.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Beatrice Simpkins. I'm the Chief Program Officer for the Partnership to End Homelessness, on whose behalf I'm speaking today. The partnership is focused on preventing and ultimately ending homelessness via housing, health education, and changing the public narrative. I want to thank Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala and the members of the Committee on General Welfare for the opportunity to testify today. And we support any effort to improve data and transparency in the shelter system that will help all of us be informed and be able to do better for the people that we serve. The City Council is poised to push for change in how the city understands, addresses, and corrects the issue of homelessness. For the past 40 years, the partnership has been on the front lines addressing the needs of New Yorkers experiencing homelessness. And what we've learned is that prevention is the best way to end homelessness. It works, it's most effective, it's most cost effective, and it's the most humanitarian solution. Prevention means safeguarding people in their existing homes via rental assistance and other similar measures. It means safeguarding the state stock of affordable homes via investment in affordable housing. Family homelessness represents the majority of homelessness because of domestic violence, overcrowding, evictions, and three main feeders of homelessness in New York City. And disproportionately, of course, this affects women and children. When people enter the shelter system, their lives are disrupted, the adults, the children, and often that lasts for generations. So in conclusion, we need to move beyond reactionary policies and strategies and towards an approach to solve homelessness that includes greater investment in the creation and preservation of affordable housing and supportive housing, legal assistance, mental health, and other public assistance measures that address the root causes of homelessness. The partnership is ready to be a partner in this, and we thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you so much, Beatrice, for your testimony, and thank you to this entire panel for speaking today. I'm now going to call on the following two panels, just so everyone has a heads up. The next panel will be in the following order: Brendan Cheney, Nicole McVinua, and Craig Hughes. And then the panel after that will be Camilla Broderick, Sonny Wright, Tawaki Komatsu, and and then Tawaki Komatsu would be the last person. So again, this panel will be Brendan Cheney, Nicole McVinua, and Craig Hughes. I will now turn it over to Brendan Cheney for testimony.
Starting time.
It appears that Brendan Cheney is no longer on the Zoom, so I will now turn it over to Nicole McVinua.
Starting time.
One of our big challenges.
Over to Nicole McVinua.
Hi, I'm sorry. Good afternoon, Chair Ayala and members of the committee. My name is Nicole McVinua, and I'm the Director of Policy at Urban Pathways. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Urban Pathways is a nonprofit homeless services and supportive housing provider. We assist single adults through a combination of street outreach, drop-in services, safe havens, extended stay residences, and permanent supportive housing. Last year, Urban Pathways served over 3,900 New Yorkers in need. I want to begin my testimony by clearly stating that no one chooses to be homeless. Homelessness, and especially street homelessness, is a failure of the social safety net, not the individual. And the city must refrain from characterizing people residing in the subway or on the street as criminals or causes of increased rates of crime. Is simply not the case. Urban Pathways' extensive experience of street outreach has led us to focus our street-facing services on the drop-in center and safe haven models of service for single adults. We do not operate any congregate shelters. We really focus on this model as a low barrier of entry that makes that we believe is just more effective. And so with this, we're thrilled to see the investment to create more, but the funding has, for the expansion of these services has to be coupled with a reevaluation of the RFP for these programs and the funding allocated to pay the employees in the contracts. If this is not done, we will not be able to staff these programs. Urban Pathways just opened a new safe haven, and we cannot fill 22 out of the total 37 positions that are necessary to run the program. Our contract starts, security, maintenance, cooks, really essential staff at just $15 an hour. And with, the open job market, folks
Time expired.
Do not want to accept these jobs. And so I just, I have much more information in my written testimony, which I've submitted, but that's really what I want to highlight. We will not be able to staff these programs if the wages are not increased in the DHS contracts. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Nicole, for your testimony. I'll now turn to Craig Hughes for testimony.
Starting time.
Hi, thank you, Chair Ayala, members of the Committee on General Welfare for the opportunity to testify to you today. My name is Craig Hughes. I'm a social worker with the Safety Net Project at Urban Justice. If you'll bear with me, this testimony is going to be slightly unorthodox. We're submitting written testimony, but it would be a lost opportunity not to correct the record. I'll go slightly over, but not in a disrespectful way, and will be as quick as possible. To be blunt, Orwell would have been proud of the administration's performance today. War is peace, trust building is an exercise in endlessly harassing people, and dignity is an encampment raid with a garbage truck and dozens of SRG officers. The administration has shown that it is, quote unquote, laser focused on one thing above all else. PR spin aimed at people not believing their own lying eyes, getting away with treating homeless people however it wants, and fulfilling the goals of business leaders to get homeless people out of sight. It may be worth recalling Rudy Giuliani's recollection on his homeless policies. And I'll quote from an article a few years ago, quote, "You chase them and you chase them and you chase them and you chase them, and they either get the treatment they need or you chase them out of the city." Unfortunately, that has been the policy that we have seen in the city for the last 25 years, which is an endless effort to chase homeless people around, out of the subways, off the streets, out of the parks, out of public sight. Everyone in the business community tends to come up with some new way of talking about feeling burdened by having to see homeless people. And unfortunately, our politicians are often echoing that, and it's very troubling. I'm just going to correct a few specific things for the record here. One, what the administration is talking about in terms of opening safe haven beds, what it wasn't acknowledging is that it is simultaneously closing hundreds of single rooms right now. So while there's a future effort to open up some number of stabilization and safe haven beds,
Time expired.
I will be just a couple more moments, if that's okay, Chair. While the administration is stating its plans to invest and open up new safe haven or stabilization beds with an unknown number of beds per room, we know at Safety Net Project we have clients in multiple hotels. The administration is closing hundreds of single rooms right now, and at some point, the closure of the single rooms starts to creep up into the number of safe haven stabilization beds they are reportedly opening. And so right now, what the mayor is doing is closing rooms. And we know that will land people on the street. They didn't acknowledge that, but there's an increasing number of sites in hotels with single rooms that are being closed right now. Secondly, it's important to note that the numbers that were not advantageous for them to give you were numbers they did not have on record. So for example, they did not have how many people are staying in these quote unquote placements, whatever the placements may be. I appreciated, Chair Ayala, that you actually asked them some specificity there, but it's interesting that they didn't know how long if people are currently actually staying. That's very strategic on their part. It'll be interesting to see if they get back. Unfortunately, we know from the past that typically people don't stay unless there's very specific access to environments they've gotten, particularly single rooms. I have been personally on many sweeps. We go to sweeps to support people that are going through them and to try to do our best to advocate for people. I will tell you that hands down, it is not the case the administration is offering people resources that the previous administration didn't. In fact, it's the exact same procedure that we saw under the last administration. As policy, and I had an interaction with Joint Command Center staff just a week or two ago at a sweep. As policy, DHS does not assist people during sweeps with storage. They do not do it. What they say is go to HRA. One of the most important things that people on the street need is easy access to storage, but opening a storage unit in New York City is very hard. We will go as SMP with people during sweeps and bring them to storage units to open storage. DHS will not do it as policy. And the fact that they misshape that and say they do otherwise is questionable given they're testifying under oath. I would add that they do not have translation services. So we, for example, will use translation lines at the encampment sweeps where we will translate for people. We've translated for people in Bengali, we've translated for people in Spanish. If JCC or outreach staff don't speak those languages, they don't do that. And so what you see is these very awkward interactions where they're showing up with cars, sometimes beaming lights at people in encampments, sometimes under bridges, but there's actually no translation services typically offered. And those notices, having personally seen dozens and dozens and dozens of them, are not translated. Maybe they're translated somewhere, they're never put in the place where the person's being swept. So I was working not too long ago with a woman who speaks Hindi. The notice was written in English, repeatedly put on the pole near her encampment in English, and she literally did not understand what it meant because it was not put in her language. They are not being accurate when they're telling you they are doing these things. This is a PR spin. I would also add, and council member, perhaps you can sympathize with this, I don't know, but I know that I've spoken with other council members who can. Unfortunately, with encampments, they say call 311. Call 311, and then the council members will often call 311 or work with the local outreach teams to try to help someone, some variation of help. Unfortunately, in New York City, as directly related to the Homestat program, which was modeled on CompStat, it is a broken windows program for homeless services. Unfortunately, when someone calls 311, they wrap people into the sweeps operations. This isn't a situation where 311 gets called and people are gently helped in. It's a situation where council members get deputized, civilians get deputized to unfortunately be part of a policing operation for street homeless people that doesn't get them help. It does get them wrapped up in sweeps. Finally, two final points here, and I apologize for going on. In terms of supportive housing beds, one of the most important things, so we have been very vocal at SMP about supportive housing and what doesn't often get talked about. One of the most important things that doesn't get talked about with supportive housing is that the people in encampments are the people who will almost never get actually into supportive housing. And the people on the subways that are getting targeted by cops, they're almost never going to get into supportive housing. And the reason for that is that the supportive housing industry is shaped in such a way that people who are struggling the most are systematically weeded out from accessing it. Sometimes in social services, it gets called creaming or cherry picking. We every year do foils with DSS on the reasons people are rejected for supportive housing. And very often it is for the exact same reasons they're eligible for supportive housing. If supportive housing doesn't allow people who are struggling the most to access it because providers determine that they shouldn't allow them to be housed in their own specific unit that they're interviewing for, then unfortunately we know that people land up in Rikers. Sometimes I've had at least one client who's passed away while waiting for supportive housing. And this is the kind of thing where we're not talking about what the nuts and bolts look like because the administration's talking in PR bullets. And unfortunately, the supportive housing industry in general has evaded bringing up the fact that its own providers very often are the people who are refusing to house people directly from the street. We actually know that we can house people directly from the street and that you can go from subway to an apartment, but we have to be honest about having that conversation so that we can get to the point where people who are going through sweeps and things like that are actually offered the housing that they're demanding, like Mr. Grima was this morning when he said, don't give me a shelter, give me an apartment. And actually, that's something the city could do. Just the final point I'll make is that there's a bill, and thank you, Chair Ayala, for introducing it, calling for a general homeless census. There are 5 municipal shelter systems run by 4 city agencies. For decades, what has happened is that people that are not in the DHS system have been systematically left out of certain resources. That bill is very important because creating a number that includes all 5 of the municipal shelter systems run by the 4 city agencies in one number that the administration is accountable to, that will truly make a difference in making sure that everyone has access to resources because everyone will be someone the administration is accountable to and not able to hide by not acknowledging them as part of the homeless population. Thank you. I'm sorry it took forever on this, but I appreciate your time.
No, I really appreciate your testimony. A lot of really valuable, information there, and you're right, and I think that this is again my frustration with all of this is that we have to listen to impacted individuals a little bit more closely because they have the solutions and we know where we should be directing public dollars and where we should be directing all of our attention, and I really appreciate a lot of the points that you guys have made today.
Thank you again, Nicole, and thank you, Craig, for your testimony. I will now call on the next panel. The next panel will be in the following order: Camilla Broderick, San, right? I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, followed by Tawaki Kamatsu. Over now to Camilla Broderick.
Starting time.
Thanks. Good morning, Chair Ayala and esteemed council members. My name is Camilla Broderick, and I'm honored to be one of the community navigators on the Community First team. I'm here before you to discuss the Center for Court Innovation's Community First and Rapid Engagement initiatives, both proposed to City Council in an effort to build out a continuum of care across different points of engagement with the justice system in the community and in the precinct respectively. Operating out of Midtown Community Court, a project for the Center of Court Innovation, the Community First team works with some of Manhattan's most vulnerable individuals, those who are homeless, battling mental illness and or substance use disorders. We meet community members where they're at in their own communities, providing critical supports and services in an attempt to prevent engagement with law enforcement and the criminal justice system. Using a client-centered approach, community navigators ensure the client's needs are met while maintaining their dignity and sense of self-worth. Community First works to link clients to social and wellness services while coordinating care through voluntary engagement, built on relationships developed through consistent outreach. Specifically, Community First employs community navigators like me, who partner with community-based organizations to link individuals to social services, substance use treatment, and mental health support. Community navigators make our program so special because of our direct, lived, and shared experiences that we draw from to build rapport with our clients. Community First focuses on a peer support model that allows us to build a trusting and sustainable relationship. My past substance use and justice involvement allows me to foster a deep connection to my clients and have a glimpse into some of the barriers that they may be facing that other outreach efforts may not consider. I'm especially proud of the harm reduction work that I get to do through Community First. Among crucial basic necessities such as hygiene kits, clothes, and water, when we bring our outreach cart in the Times Square area, it's stocked with naloxone and fentanyl test strips to train and distribute to community members. When I used opiates many years ago, these kits—
Time expired.
Just a few more seconds, sorry. These kits were not easy to obtain and overdosing was practically a death sentence. Our harm reduction approach drastically changes the accessibility of these skills, tools, and resources. This is an extremely important part of our outreach for me personally because it has the potential to save lives and reduce the stigma of substance use in the community, all while maintaining client agency. The work we do every day isn't easy, but I know we're making a real difference in our clients' lives and the community in Times Square. And for those who may miss in our efforts, Midtown operates a rapid engagement initiative that encourages connection to tangible resources and important information at the point of arrest, but before arraignment to streamline access to meaningful and timely support. Thank you.
Thank you, Camilla, for your testimony. Now going to call San Wright for testimony.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Ayala and esteemed council members of the Committee on General Welfare. My name is Sana Wright, External Affairs Manager at the Times Square Alliance. I stand before you today on behalf of the Alliance to discuss Community First as well, an innovative pilot program that connects individuals experiencing homelessness to social services that support their transition off the street. After the pandemic emptied Times Square, we noted a significant increase in the number of individuals facing housing insecurity, homelessness, mental illness, and/or substance use disorders in our district. Amidst a national reckoning on criminal justice reform and the heightened vulnerability of this population due to COVID-19, it became increasingly clear that routing unsheltered individuals into the criminal justice system was inhumane and unsustainable. Instead, the Alliance approached Midtown Community Court, a program of the Center for Court Innovation with over 25 years of experience engaging Manhattan's most vulnerable individuals to implement a solution that offers a more holistic approach. With seed funding from the Alliance, Community First launched in April 2021 in partnership with 2 additional social service organizations, Breaking Ground and Fountain House. In July of 2021, the program received funding from the Department of Homeless Services to continue its work for an additional year. Community First employs community navigators, most of whom share lived experience with their clients to provide consistent outreach to people in need on our streets 5 days a week, 12 hours a day. Navigators build trust by learning client stories, offering essentials like food, blankets, and bathroom facility access, and over time, connecting them to long-term support like housing, employment, and/or drug treatment through the program's partnerships with Breaking Ground and Fountain House. To date, navigators have given out clothing on 325 separate occasions, food on 333 separate occasions, trained 28 community members in harm reduction techniques, and made 92 referrals to partnering organizations. As a result of these interactions, 40 individuals have accepted long-term care, including drug treatment, mental health care, housing, and financial benefits. This data demonstrates that time spent building trusting relationships, through consistent outreach is a key first step to addressing clients' more substantive needs, which ultimately must be met for successful transitions off the street. In a time of critical need, Community First demonstrated and continues to demonstrate strong coordination between nonprofits, business improvement districts like the Alliance, and city agencies to sustainably support unsheltered New Yorkers. This model is easily replicated, and we hope to expand south of Times Square, where there's a large population of people in need of the support and services Community First offers. However, with our funding from DHS set to expire at the end of June, additional financial support is critical. We are grateful for the city's contributions thus far and hope that they continue to support this work so that we see programs like these established between BIDs and community organizations across all 5 boroughs. Thank you.
Thank you so much to this panel for your to these panelists for your testimony. I'm now going to turn to Tawaki Kamatsu for testimony.
Starting time.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So with regards to, I guess, the testimony that was provided to this hearing by Mr. Jenkins earlier today, as well as Urban Pathways representative, they were basically lying to your face. 2 days ago, I filed a petition for a writ of certiorari to the US Supreme Court against Urban Pathways, against HRA. So the point is, Urban Pathways has fraudulently sued me 3 times, claiming that a valid lease agreement exists, in spite of the fact that there hasn't. Urban Pathways and HRA jointly changed my lease agreement 2 days after it was signed. So the point is, Ms. Ayala, I've talked to you previously. You told me not to talk about pending litigation matters. So with regards to FOIL requests, can you intercede on my behalf to have HRA perform its legal duty to comply with my FOIL requests that date back to issues from 2016? I mean, it's a fair question. It's about the agenda for today's hearing, about having people moved into permanent housing. So the point is, if you take me out of the equation, if someone signs an apartment lease agreement, HRA then changes that lease agreement after it's signed, and that lease agreement was for a private apartment with no roommate, there's going to be a roommate conflict and things are going to snowball. So point is, can you do something about that? Can you answer a question?
I'm happy to discuss that after the hearing if you'd like.
I contacted you, haven't gotten a response.
I haven't received an inquiry, so thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Tawaki, for your testimony, and to this entire panel for your testimony. At this time, if we have inadvertently missed anyone that would like to testify, if you can please use the Zoom raise hand function now, and we will call on you in the order your hand is raised for anybody who we inadvertently missed. All right, seeing no hands raised, Chair Ayala, we have concluded public testimony for this hearing. I will now turn to you for any closing remarks and then to close the hearing.
Absolutely. I just wanted to thank all of the advocates for being here today. I hope that you know that a lot of the work that we do and how we prioritize our public dollars and create policies really based on a lot of the work that you do. So thank you for that, because I know that it isn't easy work. And, you know, obviously we have a shared responsibility to do the right thing by unhoused New Yorkers, but we need to make sure that we're doing it in a way that truly makes an impact, a positive impact on the lives of the unhoused New Yorkers that we're discussing today. And I think that we got a lot of answers that we wanted today, but I think there are also a lot of unanswered questions that that we need to continue to review and to hash on. But I welcome, you know, continued conversations with all of you in the next few months, because I think that this is really one of those situations where we need all hands on deck, and we need to work collaboratively to really find the solutions that we need. So thank you all for being here today. It was a pleasure hearing from all of you, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thanks, everyone. And this hearing is now concluded.
Thank you.